Chapter 1471. After figuring out the various powers of the minor constellation palace, Lu Yi realized that other than being able to open a door to the main hall of the constellation palace, its ability to reverse the seawater and turn it into starry sky energy seemed to be of little use to him. This was because he had to go deep into the sea to use the power of the treasure. However, he would have to activate the power of the talent tree if he wanted to go deep into the sea. This shouldn't be the case. Something bestowed by the Constellation Palace shouldn't be so useless. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi suddenly had an idea. If this idea could be realized, the value of the minor Constellation Palace would be huge. However, before that he had to find a suitable place to use it. The deserted island that he had stayed on previously seemed to be a good choice. It was a deserted place and no one would pass by on a normal day. It was a good opportunity to give it a try. Thinking of this, Lu Yi immediately took out his planetary boat and headed towards the deserted island that he had stayed on previously. After more than a day, he arrived at the deserted island. He scanned it with his divine perception and found no traces of people. This was indeed a deserted place. Without stopping, he dived into the 10,000 Elephant Sea and swam to the bottom of the deserted island. For a normal island, even if part of it was exposed above the sea, there would still be a part that was connected to the ground. That was the foundation of the island. However, the islands on the 10,000 Elephant Sea were different. These islands, regardless of whether they were spiritual islands or deserted islands, did not have a foundation. They were like floating continents on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. The strange thing was that since the beginning of time, these spiritual islands floating on the 10,000 Phenomenon Sea had never changed their positions. No matter if the 10,000 Phenomenon Sea was calm or turbulent, they always stood in the same place and did not move at all. No one knew why this was, just like how no one knew why these spiritual islands, which did not look special, were not eroded by the seawater of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. The countless islands on the 10,000 Elephant Sea seemed to be protected by a mysterious force. Even if Sunshine Realm experts fought on them, they would not be damaged at all. If not for this, the 10,000 Elephant Sea, which was a chaotic environment, would have sunk many islands long ago. Lu Yi moved his body and arrived at the bottom of the deserted island. After searching for a while, he found a suitable location and placed the minor constellation palace in it. He then slightly controlled the power of the minor constellation palace so that it maintained a decent but not exaggerated efficiency in reversing the seawater. For individuals like cultivators, the minor constellation palace was undoubtedly of little value. However, Lu Yi thought that if he placed it here over the years, would it improve the cultivation environment on this deserted island? Turn this deserted island into a spiritual island. If he could, it would mean that he could use the minor constellation palace to create a spiritual island that belonged to him. In the future, if he could find the way home and bring the cultivators of 9 regions over, they would have a suitable and comfortable cultivation environment. Lu Yi wasn't sure if it would work, but from the looks of it, there was a high probability that it would work. However, this kind of thing couldn't be done too quickly, or it would be easy to be targeted. That was why he had to control the efficiency of the minor constellation hall's seawater reversal. After settling down the minor constellation hall and putting on some disguises, Lu Yi returned. He didn't have to worry about someone stealing this treasure. Under the premise that no one could go deep into the Wanxiang Sea, no one but him could take this thing away. As for the star beasts under the sea, there were no traces of powerful star beasts in the shallow waters, so there was even less to worry about. The next step was to wait for the test of time. He returned to the cave in the rock wall where he had previously hidden. He meditated on the inheritance of the small saber while waiting quietly. A few days later, the azure sea snail could finally be used again. Lu Yi immediately took it out and blew softly. The door opened and he walked in. He appeared in front of the heavenly sea snail palace again. However, it was different from the previous 2 times. This time, there were 2 mermaids guarding here. After seeing Lu Ye's figure, one of the mermaids immediately ran out, while the other gesticulated and mumbled something to Lu Yi. Lu Yi didn't understand, but after seeing the mermaid running away, he more or less understood the situation. These two mermaids were obviously ordered by Lu to guard here. Because she didn't know when Lu Yi would come, she had to get information about Lu Ye's arrival as soon as possible. The mermaid who left was going to inform her. Sure enough, a moment later, Bai Lu rushed over and shouted from afar, "Li Tai Bai." Lu Yi looked in the direction of the voice and saw her with a happy smile. She rushed in front of him, her fishtail wagging nonstop. "There's not much time, so I'll make a long story short. I brought some things for you. Also, if there's anything you want, remember to tell me the next time I come, and I'll buy it." Saying so, Lu Yi took out all the spirit pills he had purchased from the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce, sorted them into categories, and handed over a dozen storage rings to Bai Lu. "What are these?" Bai Lu took them in a daze. "They're all spirit pills that can be bought outside." "So many? It's too precious." Bai Lu was touched. "You're right." She thought Lu Yi was just coming over to take a look, but she didn't expect him to bring so many things. The Merfolk clan had already experienced the wonders of spirit pills before. Whether it was healing or cultivation, they were greatly beneficial. However, the number of spirit pills Lu Yi had exchanged for last time was not many, and there were only a few types, so the Merfolk clan treated them like treasures. "You can use them as much as you want, I'll buy more when I'm done. Don't save them." After saying so, Lu Yi didn't stay and waved his hand. "I'll be leaving first, I'll come back next time." He turned around and stepped into the door, his figure disappearing. "When's the next time?" Bai Lu shouted, but there was no response. She couldn't help but slap the floor with her fishtail, making a thump. The two mermaids trembled at the side, feeling that the princess was in a bad mood. Taking the several storage rings that Lu Yi had given her, Bai Lu returned unhappily. With so many spirit dawn, she had to hand them over to the elders to deal with. Moreover, Lu Yi had also said that if the Merfolk clan needed anything, she could tell him the next time he came, but she really didn't know what the clan needed. Lu Yi had already returned to the cave where he was hiding. This time, he didn't talk to the Merfolk clan about the trade. Firstly, there wasn't enough time. He couldn't wait for the Merfolk clan to gather enough spirit jades before returning. Secondly, the Merfolk clan wasn't an ungrateful race. He had sent so many spirit pills, so the Merfolk clan would definitely return the favor. This could be seen from the previous two transactions. So the next time he went, the Merfolk clan would most likely prepare enough spirit jades as a reward. Of course, even if they didn't, it didn't matter. It would be convenient for him to do anything in the future if he maintained contact with the Merfolk clan. The minor constellation hall had been settled down. Lu Yi couldn't leave for the time being because he wanted to see if his idea could succeed, so he had to stay here for a while. Just as he was about to continue comprehending the inheritance in the knife, he suddenly felt some movement outside. Then a familiar voice sounded in his ears, "Sister, there's a cave here. Why didn't I see it the last time I came?" Another familiar voice sounded, "The spiritual island on the Vientiane Sea is the creation of heaven and earth. There's nothing strange about a cave. Such a deserted island must be uninhabited. Let's go in and have a look." While speaking, the sound of clothes fluttering came out. Then, the person who spoke first said in surprise, "Sister, there's a tactical formation here. Someone's here." The sister was slightly surprised. She was about to take her sister out. Suddenly, there was a change in front of her. The tactical formation broke by itself. Then, a figure sitting cross-legged appeared in the eyes of the two sisters. 6 eyes met. The two sisters were slightly stunned because they found that they had seen this person before. It was the person who looked like senior brother Fa from the back, as Dumbo said. At the bottom of the cave, Lu Yi looked at the two sisters faintly. He didn't know what they were doing here. Just now, there was a tactical formation blocking, and he had just returned from the Merfolk clan. He didn't feel carefully, so the two sisters didn't notice him until they were in front of him. On the Vientiane Sea, when such unfamiliar cultivators suddenly met face to face, they would inevitably have a certain degree of vigilance. But the Xingyue sisters didn't seem to have much vigilance against Lu Yi. After seeing Lu Ye's face clearly, the two sisters hurriedly bowed. Caixing said, "Sorry to disturb you. We didn't mean to offend you. Please don't blame us." With that said, The two sisters slowly left the room. Lu Yi sat there without moving. After they left, Lu Yi frowned and stood up. He flew out of the cave and hovered in the air. After a careful look, he frowned even more. Because in the short time he stayed in the Merfolk clan's territory, many people came to this deserted island. And it seemed that, from the looks of it, these people seemed to be building a foundation on this deserted island. They definitely didn't come up with this idea on the spur of the moment, but had planned for a long time. In other words, someone had been eyeing this deserted island for a long time and was ready to use this place as their base. As for the leader, when he saw the Xingyue sisters, Lu Yi had some guesses. At this moment, it was true. Who else could it be but Chu Shen? Lu Yi just remembered that this guy sent a message to him a few days ago, saying that he led people to occupy a spiritual island and wanted to invite him to guard it. Lu Yi thought it was troublesome and ignored him. From the looks of it, wasn't this the one that this fellow was occupying? How was this a spiritual island? It was clearly a deserted island that no one cared about. In addition to Chu Shen, Little Dumb, Crooked Teeth, and Lucky Star, who he saw last time, were all there. There were also more than a dozen constellations that Lu Yi didn't know. He didn't know where Chu Shen found these people, but looking at their spiritual power fluctuations, they were just at the early stage of the constellation. They were busy. At this moment, the Xingyue sisters came to Chu Shen and were talking to him. Chu Shen turned his head and looked at Lu Yi, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Meeting his gaze, Lu Yi was annoyed. He couldn't wait to pull this guy to a place where no one was around and beat him until his mother couldn't recognize him. There were so many deserted islands on the Vientiane Sea. Why did this guy choose the same one as him? Chapter 1472. Just as Lu Yi was having a headache, Chu Shen came over with a smile and a warm attitude. He cupped his hands from afar. Chu Shen from Domineering Palace greets brother. Domineering Palace? Lu Yi frowned slightly. What kind of stupid name was that? Was he not afraid of being beaten up when he went out? Chu Shen's eyebrows danced. Domineering as in domineering. Lu Yi pretended not to understand such a blatant hint. Anyway, as long as he did not admit it, no one would treat him as Fa Wuzuan. Chu Shen knew the sensitivity of Fa Wuzuan's identity. Although he was sure that the person in front of him was Espanax, if Espanax did not admit it, he would not expose it. The only thing he didn't understand was why the Espanax would appear here so coincidentally. He had sent a message to invite the Espanax over, but the Espanax didn't respond. He thought that it was all over, but he didn't expect to meet him here today. This time, he could not miss it no matter what. He knew how strong Espanax was. If he was here, the strength of Domineering Palace would definitely increase by a lot. He was not in a hurry to express his attitude. Chu Shen knew that Espanax was not easy to get along with. If he was too anxious, it would be bad. He politely said, "How should I address you?" He really did not know Espanax's name. After all, Fei Wuzuan was just an alias. Lu Yi glanced at him lightly. "Li Tai Bai." "So it's Senior Li. Chu Shen greets you. What are you doing?" Lu Yi asked. Although he already had a guess, he still had to ask clearly. Chu Shen said, "It's like this, Senior Li. Domineering Palace has decided to make this place our base. If Senior Li is interested, change to another place." Before Chu Shen could finish, Lu Yi interrupted him. He still had to wait here for the power of the minor Constellation Palace to ferment. How could he let others cause trouble here? Moreover, there were so many deserted islands in the Wanxiang Sea. Other than this place, Chu Shen had many other choices. There was no need for it to be here. Chu Shen was stunned and immediately looked at Lu Yi pitifully. If it was someone else who spoke to him like this, he would have already called Xiao Dai and the rest over to form a formation. But Histanex had spoken, he did not dare to refute. "Do you have any objections?" Lu Yi looked at him. Chu Shen quickly said, "No, no, no. How could I have any objections? I'll change to Senior Li. Then, Senior Li, I'll leave now? Go." Chu Shen clasped his fists and left. But after a few steps, Lu Ye's voice came from behind. Chu Shen turned around. "Senior brother, do you have any other orders?" Lu Yi remained silent. Initially, he thought that he should wait for the minor constellation hall to grow in power and not allow anyone to disturb him. However, if his idea could really be realized, then this deserted island would slowly become a spiritual island. Once it became a spiritual island, it would definitely attract the attention of others. By then, even if Chu Shen did not come, others would come. On the other hand, if Chu Shen occupied this place in advance, he might be able to reduce some of the trouble and control the situation within his control. After all, Chu Shen was the young master of the chariot industry. He also had Jiao Yan as his backer. Even though Bachi Palace was just established and did not have a strong foundation, not many people would dare to cause trouble for them. Chu Shen's name itself was a layer of protection. Thinking about it this way, allowing Chu Shen's domineering palace to occupy this place did not seem to be a bad thing. On the contrary, there were some benefits. Senior apprentice brother? Chu Shen saw that Lu Yi did not speak and did not know what he wanted to do. After a while, Lu Yi made a decision and said, "This place will be Bachi Palace's territory in the future, but I have a request." Chu Shen looked solemn. "Senior apprentice brother, please tell me." Lu Yi pointed at the location of the cave where he stayed before. "That piece of land belongs to me." Chu Shen was stunned and was overjoyed. "No problem." He thought to himself, not to mention that piece of land, even if you wanted the entire island, there would be no problem. Boss Fa was still reliable. He obviously agreed to his previous suggestion and was prepared to stay and guard Bachi Island. However, Boss Fa did not make it clear, so he could pretend that he did not know anything. He was in a good mood. Currently, Bachi Palace did not have many people. Other than Xiao Dai, Crooked Tooth, and the others, the rest of the people were people he recruited from Zhaolai Island with spiritual jades. These people naturally did not have much loyalty, and their strength was not high because the conditions that Chu Shen could offer were not good. Lu Yi felt that he had the support of Che Ling Boundary and Jiao Yan, so he did not have to worry about food and clothing and spiritual jades. However, in reality, he had an agreement with Jiao Yan. When he was outside, he could not use Jiao Yan and Che Ling Boundary's name to do things. Jiao Yan would also not provide him with material support. The spiritual jades that he was spending now were the 500,000 that Lu Yi had given him after the auction. Currently, Bachi Palace had less than 20 people, and all of them were in the early stage of constellation. With Lu Yi, their combat power in the constellation realm was guaranteed. However, if a force wanted to establish a foothold on the Vientiane Sea, it would be impossible without Yu Yao. However, no one would spend time and effort to attack such a deserted island, so it did not matter whether Yu Yao was there or not. The group of people from Bachi Palace was busy on the island. Lu Yi looked at them for a while and shook his head helplessly. He returned to his cave and continued to comprehend the saber technique inheritance. After comprehending for a while and using some treasures to recover his damaged divine thought, Lu Yi activated the power of the talent tree and began to deduce the concealment spiritual pattern. This was a time-consuming process, and it was important to work slowly. Therefore, whenever Lu Yi was free, he would deduce the concealment spiritual pattern. However, this was the first time Lu Yi had made a deduction since the talent tree had changed 3 times. Soon, Lu Yi noticed something unusual. The efficiency of the deduction this time seemed to be much faster than before. Moreover, he could actually control the efficiency of the deduction. This discovery made Lu Yi overjoyed. This was because all along, it took a long time to deduce a new spiritual pattern. It basically took half a year to deduce it. Since the talent tree had changed 2 times, he had only deduced a total of 4 new spiritual patterns. They were the Void, Divine Blade, Divine Guard, and New Spirit Connected Branch. He also wanted to increase the speed and efficiency of the talent tree's deduction, but unfortunately, he did not know how to do it. It was only after the talent tree had changed 3 times that the talent tree seemed to have this ability. During the deduction, the speed at which the yin and yang lines changed on the talent tree's leaves was much faster than before. Under his control, the efficiency could be even faster. He was overjoyed. As expected, the talent tree had other effects after the 3 changes. Previously, he only sensed that the power to burn foreign objects could be used on others. He had a feeling that this was not the only effect after the 3 changes. Now, it seemed that his previous guess was right. It was just that he had not been able to deduce the spiritual pattern and had not noticed it. However, Lu Yi soon realized that something was wrong. As the talent tree continued to deduce, the stored fuel was rapidly depleted. Although the rate of depletion was not as fast as when he went deep into the Wanxiang Sea, it was still extremely fast. The more Lu Yi increased the efficiency of the deduction, the faster the talent tree's fuel would be depleted. He was speechless. It turned out that there was a price to pay for increasing the efficiency of the deduction, and this price was the consumption of fuel. Initially, Lu Yi had replenished the talent tree with a large amount of fuel last time. He thought that as long as he did not go deep into the Wanxiang Sea to cultivate, it would be able to last for many years. However, it seemed that this hope was going to be dashed. If he wanted to deduce new spiritual patterns quickly, he would have to consume a large amount of fuel. It was the same logic as his cultivation, using resources in exchange for time. Chapter 1473. Lu Yi downed the wine in his cup and rubbed the cup lightly with his fingers. He pondered for a moment and said, "Unparalleled then. This place will be called Unparalleled Island from now on." Chu Shen shook his head. "Unique in the world, unparalleled in the world." He gave Lu Yi a thumbs up. "Good name. I'll listen to senior brother. From now on, this will be Unparalleled Island." Lu Yi did not comment on his bottomless bootlicking. The reason why he took the name Wushuang, Lu Yi actually had his own considerations, because his current identity was announced to the outside world as Li Taibai of the Wushuang continent. If the minor constellation palace hall could transform this deserted island into a spiritual island, then in the future, he could find an opportunity to bring all the people from the 9 prefectures over and let them cultivate here. With the name Wushuang, it would make them feel closer to him. Second, don't recruit ordinary constellations anymore, Lu Yi said. There were already more than 20 people recruited from Unparalleled Island. However, these people did not have a sense of belonging or identity with the Unparalleled Palace. No matter how many people there were, it was useless. Moreover, their strength was not high. These people were more than enough to build the foundation of the Unparalleled Palace. Chu Shen nodded. "Senior brother is right. We've stopped recruiting. I've asked Lucky Star to keep an eye out for Yu Yao on Zhaolei Island. Unfortunately, there has been no news. It would be strange if there was news. Which Yu Yao would be willing to come to such a deserted place? Yu Yao were the mainstays of the various spiritual islands on the Thousand Manifestation Sea. The Unparalleled Palace had just started. They had no strength and no reputation. Naturally, no one would be willing to come. Moreover, the monthly salary that Chu Shen could offer would not be too high. Third, set up the formation on the island as soon as possible. Chu Shen was stunned. However, he agreed readily. I'll arrange it. Originally, he had planned to build the foundation of the Peerless Island first. As for the formation, it didn't seem to matter whether it existed or not. After all, it was a deserted island, and no one would attack it. What was the use of a formation? It would be a waste of spiritual jades. However, since the pharaoh had said so, he could only do as he was told. "Senior brother, do you have any other instructions?" Chu Shen asked. Lu Yi shook his head. "No. Then I'll take my leave." Chu Shen stood up and said goodbye. Just as he turned around, he heard Lu Ye's voice behind him. "You left something behind." Chu Shen was startled and hurriedly turned his head to look. He saw that there was indeed an additional item in front of where he had been sitting. When he saw what it was, he was overjoyed. "This treasure cannot be lost. Thank you, senior brother." He hurriedly bent down to pick it up and walked out of the cave to take a closer look. Sure enough, it was a twin chi and branches array disc. His heart was filled with joy. Previously, he had asked Jiao Yen for a twin chi-connected spirit array disc, but it had been cut off by Lu Yi. Now, it was obviously impossible for him to ask for a second one. He had been worried about where to find another one, but now he had one. How could he not know that the Estanics pharaoh had purposely given it to him as a form of compensation? Array discs were created by embarks, so he naturally had a lot of them. Senior brother Chu. Crooked Teeth Xiao suddenly came up to greet him. Chu Shen put away the disc array and looked towards her. Seeing Crooked Teeth's expression seemed to be a little excited, he did not know what good thing she encountered and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" Crooked Teeth Xiao said, "Senior brother Chu, feel it carefully. See if there is any difference between here and a few days ago?" Chu Shen did not understand, but still immersed his mind and carefully felt it. After a moment, his expression could not help but become serious. He looked at Crooked Teeth Xiao with incomparable astonishment and said in surprise, "Starry sky energy?" Crooked Teeth Xiao fiercely nodded, "Yes, starry sky energy." Chu Shen's eyes widened and looked around. It can't be. His luck could not be so good, right? He randomly chose a deserted island that no one cared about and it actually turned into a living place? There were many islands on the Wanxiang Sea. Generally, they were divided into two types: spirit islands and deserted islands. Spirit islands were generally islands with starry sky energy. Deserted islands were islands without starry sky energy. Putting aside the deserted islands for now, other than being a place for cultivators to stay, they had no value. But there were good and bad spirit islands. Some spirit islands did not have rich starry sky energy and could not even satisfy the most basic cultivation of cultivators. Because the starry sky energy was very thin, but some good spirit islands not only had rich starry sky energy, they could even breed spirit jade mines. And these higher quality spirit islands were all occupied by the top forces or galaxies. Ordinary people could not interfere at all. But spirit islands and deserted islands were not unchanging. Some spirit islands did not know why the starry sky energy dissipated and the spirit veins dried up. On the contrary, some deserted islands suddenly burst with vitality. Under the circumstances that no one knew, starry sky energy was born and slowly turned into spirit islands. This process of turning a deserted island into a spirit island was called turning into a living place by cultivators. It was like being reborn from death. Chu Shen could be sure that Wuxia Island did not have any starry sky energy before. But today, after careful sensing, he actually felt the existence of starry sky energy. Although it was very thin, it was undoubtedly starry sky energy. This was obviously a sign that the deserted island was turning into a living place. His heart trembled. If that was the case, then this deserted island was not a worthless place. Although he did not know how far it would turn into a living place, as long as it was related to a spirit island, it had great value. Suddenly, he remembered the 3 things that Pharaoh instructed him to do. The last one was to quickly set up a large formation on the island. He did not understand why Pharaoh instructed him to do so. But now, it seemed that Pharaoh had already sensed the subtle changes in Wuxia Island. Setting up a large formation in advance could prevent the starry sky energy from dissipating. Secondly, it could prevent external enemies from coveting the island. If Wuxia Island was just a deserted island, there was naturally no need to consider these. But it was turning into a living place, there was no need to consider more. Pharaoh was indeed far-sighted. Thinking about it, Chu Shen asked in a low voice, "Other than you, who else sensed it?" Crooked Mouse said, "Everyone should have sensed it." Chu Shen thought about it and agreed. Constellation realm cultivators were very sensitive to starry sky energy. He did not sense it previously mainly because the starry sky energy was still very thin and he did not sense it carefully. Others would be able to sense it if they paid attention. Call junior sister Xiao Dai and the Xingyu sisters. Set up the large formation on the island first. Everything else can be delayed. Chu Shen quickly instructed. Crooked Mouse also knew that this was a serious matter. He immediately nodded and turned to leave. Obviously, he was preparing to set up the formation. Chu Shen stayed where he was. Suddenly, he felt a blissful worry. If Wuxia Island was really turning into a spirit island, Wuxia Palace would definitely not be able to protect it. Even with Pharaoh guarding it, it would not be enough. Although Pharaoh was powerful, he was still alone. Hence, he still needed to recruit people. However, he did not need those at the early stage of Constellation Realm. He had to find people with power and influence. He took out a musical note and sent a message to Lucky Star, who was guarding Zhaolai Island, to give him some instructions. At the same time, Lu Yi also took out his own musical note and sent a message out. "You there?" The other party replied quickly. "If you have something to say, say it. If not, I will not chat. I am very busy." After not seeing him for so many days, the old man's temper had risen. Moreover, what could this old man possibly do? Even though his cultivation was mediocre, he didn't have much lifespan left. Anyone could tell with a single glance that Yu Yao wouldn't be able to make a name for herself on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Therefore, Lu Yi reckoned that Yu Yao would still be wandering around after arriving here. No force would be willing to accept him. "I will find something for you to do. Go to Zhaolai Island and find a woman from Wushuang Island who looks weak and delicate. Tell her that you are willing to be recruited. Well, if you can't find Wushuang Island, find Domineering Qi Island." Tang Jun replied, "I am very busy every day. I am so busy that I can't split myself. Do I need you to find something for me to do? What, Wushuang Island or Domineering Qi Island? I have never heard of them. I will not go." "Then don't regret it. I am afraid that the Qingli Taoist world will not have a share of the good things here in the future." Lu Yi finished speaking and kept his musical note. Somewhere in the Wanxiang Sea, Tang Jun, who was flying in the starry sky, immediately stopped. If Li Taibai had said something trivial, he would not have cared at all. If he had found the way home, he would have cared. However, if he had brought up the Qingli Taoist world, he could not help but be concerned. He could not figure out what good things Li Taibai was talking about. Tang Jun could not help but send a message to ask, but there was no reply. Tang Jun cursed angrily. He took out the star map, found the location of Zhaolai Island, and sped towards it. Since he had nothing to do, it was not a big deal to go and take a look. He thought that Li Taibai would not fool him about such things. Even if he was fooled, he could just leave directly. There was no loss. He hurried to Zhaolai Island and saw a large number of cultivators gathered there. Many of them had signs in front of or beside them. It was a dazzling sight. Tang Jun had been here a few times before and had been recruited. However, when they saw that he was so old and did not seem to have many years left to live, they all rejected him. This made him feel rather sad. Lu Ye's guess was right. Ever since he came to the Wanxiang Sea, Tang Jun had been in a state of idleness. He was not involved in the opening of the Constellation Hall, and he could not get involved in Yu Yao's affairs. He was extremely bored. He thought of the Peerless Island or Domineering Aura Island as he searched among the crowd. After a while, he saw a delicate-looking woman. The sign beside her was the recruitment notice for Domineering Aura Island. At this moment, this weak-looking woman was talking to another petite woman. Tang Jun walked forward and heard that the two of them were talking about the rewards for being recruited. He stood quietly at the side and waited. After a while, the two women finished their discussion. The delicate-looking woman looked very happy. Lucky Star had already noticed Tang Jun. He turned around and looked at him. "Is there something you need?" Tang Jun stroked his beard with one hand and pointed at the sign beside her. "I'm here for this." As he spoke, he slightly circulated his spiritual power. Yu Yao's mid-stage cultivation was clearly visible. Lucky Star was stunned. She had never thought that she would be so lucky one day. She had just received Chu Shin's message and changed the recruitment notice, and not only did she immediately attract a late-stage Constellation Realm cultivator, she even had Yu Yao deliver herself to her doorstep. End of chapter. Chapter 1474. When the Constellation Hall first opened, although the Lucky Star's name had been given to her, in reality, she had nothing to do with luck. Instead, she had been plagued with bad luck. The main reason she had chosen this name was to ward off bad luck and see if it could change her bad luck. However, it was not very effective. Until today, a late-stage Constellation senior martial sister had been recruited, and now, Yu Yao. The Lucky Star's eyes were slightly moist. "Senior, are you really here because you were recruited?" "Of course." Tang Jun nodded. The Lucky Star did not dare to be negligent. He displayed his utmost sincerity and began to negotiate with Tang Jun. He had thought that Yu Yao's conditions would be difficult to satisfy, But who would have thought that she did not have any special requirements? She accepted all the conditions he offered. For a moment, the lucky star was at a loss. On the other hand, the late-stage constellation senior marshal sister, who was watching from the side, seemed to have sensed something. After the negotiations were over, the lucky star put away his tablet. "Gentlemen, I'll bring you to Tyrannical Aura Island." In the past, the lucky star had told the early-stage constellation masters to find the island by themselves. However, the two people he had recruited this time were different. In order to show his sincerity, he immediately decided to personally lead the way. After leaving Lia Island, Tang Jun immediately summoned his planetary boat when he saw the lucky star about to fly over. The lucky star landed on it with a red face. Tang Jun was very fast. In less than half a day, they had arrived at Peerless Island. The lucky star had already explained the situation on the way back. At this moment, Chu Shen was waiting on the island to welcome them. When he saw that the newcomers were indeed a late-stage constellation senior marshal sister and Yu Yao, he secretly gestured to the lucky star that he had done well. He stepped forward and bowed. They greeted each other and introduced themselves. After that, Chu Shen led Tang Jun and the petite woman to walk around the island, explaining his future plans and grand plans. The two of them listened in silence, not making any comments. Although Peerless Island was not small, they finished touring it quickly. Chu Shen was a little nervous. He did not know if the conditions he offered were enough to tempt the two of them to stay. If not, then everything he had done so far would have been for nothing. If the two of you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will not hide anything from you. The unparalleled palace has only just started, and the conditions are indeed a little crude. However, I believe that as long as everyone works together with me, the unparalleled palace will definitely have a voice in the Wanxiang Sea in the future. Tang Jun shook his head slightly. This old man is old, and old Shen has seen a lot of things. This place of new life is full of life. From his words, it was obvious that he was willing to stay. Chu Shen's expression lit up when he heard this. He looked at the petite girl who called herself Bansi. For some reason, even though this was his first time meeting this woman, Chu Shen felt that the pressure she gave him was even greater than that of Tang Jun. Half-Ci smiled. I only have one question. Senior sister, please speak. Chu Shen's expression turned solemn. The junior sister who called me here said that this is Tyrannical Aura Island, and you are called Tyrannical Palace. But from your introduction, why is this unparalleled island and unparalleled palace? Chu Shen heaved a sigh of relief and explained, I felt that the two words unparalleled sounded better than tyrannical, so I changed it. Half-Ci glanced at him and nodded slightly. She did not ask any more questions and said, even though this spiritual island has just started to show signs of life, but if this continues, the future is not bad. This kind of spiritual island is rare. Everyone says that it is unintentional to add flowers to brocade. It is only through providing charcoal in snowy weather that one can see love. I am willing to stay and overcome this difficulty with the palace master. I only hope that when the palace master achieves great success in the future, you will not forget about my efforts. Chu Shen was elated. I will definitely not forget. I am here to thank Senior Sister Bansi and Senior Tang. Half-Ci pursed her lips and smiled. Since we are on the same side, if there is anything you need help with, just give the order. Chu Shen said, there is no need to trouble the two of you with other trivial matters. However, we are preparing to set up the formation on the island. I wonder if the two of you are familiar with formations? Half-Ci said, I know a little. Tang Jun nodded too. I know a little. Then I will ask the two of you to set up the formation. Chu Shen opened his mouth and suddenly thought of something. Oh right, if the two of you have nothing to do, try not to go over there. Half-Ci glanced over and could not help but be surprised. What is so special about that place? Chu Shen said, that is where a very important guest of mine stays. He likes peace and quiet and does not like to be disturbed. Tang Jun's eyes flashed. Ever since he came here, he had been wondering why he did not see Li Taibai. Now he knew that Li Taibai was hiding there. He could not help but curse silently. This rascal, he brought me here but hid at the side. What was the reason for this? Half-Ci also looked in that direction with interest. Tang Jun was not in a hurry to find Lu Yi. Instead, he started to set up the formation on Wushuang Island with Half-Ci and Crooked Teeth Little. When he said that he had dabbled in the art of arrays, he was undoubtedly being humble. For someone like him who had lived for so many years but had yet to reach the upper level of cultivation, he would start to ponder about some unorthodox ways to pass the time. In terms of the art of arrays, he was undoubtedly an expert. Setting up an array on a spiritual island wasn't too difficult for him. Crooked Teeth Little's level of formations was not enough in front of him. But what made Tang Jun feel surprised was that the girl called Half-Ci's formations were not low either. Every small change actually made him feel enlightened. Just based on this point, Half-Ci's attainment in formations was even higher than his. Tang Jun couldn't help but sigh. After coming to Wushuang Island for a few days, Tang Jun finally found a chance to go to the cave where Lu Yi was. One old and one young, after almost a year, they were reunited. In a year's time, there was not much change in their appearances. But after seeing Lu Yi, Tang Jun was shocked. What happened to your cultivation? He almost suspected that he had sensed wrongly. Because in terms of spiritual power waves, Li Taibai had already reached the later stage of Constellation Realm. How was this possible? When he first met Li Taibai, he was only at the early stage of Constellation Realm. With the help of a red talisman, he killed Qin Yuandai and almost destroyed her family. After that, he chased after them. The two of them were swept into the worm path and came to the Vientiane galaxy. At that time, Li Taibai had advanced to the middle stage of Constellation Realm. Tang Jun was not surprised because he did not know how long Li Taibai had been at the early stage. He only thought that he was at the critical point of advancing to the middle stage. But it had only been 1.5 years since the two of them came to the Vientiane galaxy. 1.5 years to advance from the middle stage of Constellation Realm to the late stage? That was simply a fantasy. But the truth was right in front of him. After sensing carefully, Li Taibai was indeed at the late stage of Constellation Realm. Even though Tang Jun had lived for many years and had seen many things, he was still shocked beyond words. The advancement of a realm was nothing, but Tang Jun knew that Li Taibai not only had a realm, but also had the ability to kill enemies of a higher realm. When he was at the early stage of Constellation Realm, he had killed Zhao Tianmu and forced him to flee back to the Qingli Dao world. Now that he was at the late stage of Constellation Realm, did it mean that he could even fight Yu Yao? Unparalleled Li Taibai was indeed unparalleled in the world. If such a person did not die, there would definitely be a place for him in this vast galaxy in the future. Tang Jun suddenly felt that he should carefully examine his relationship with this lad. He could not simply treat him as a junior. After taking a deep breath and calming himself down, Tang Jun said, "You were the one who supported the unparalleled palace. Otherwise, why would he specially call him here?" Lu Yi shook his head. "Not really, it's just a coincidence. I roughly understand why you called me here. This spiritual island is in the process of reincarnation. If it continues, it will definitely be a good place. You want me to occupy a place here in advance. In the future, if people from your world and mine come here, they will have a place to stay, right? That's what I was thinking." Tang Jun shook his head and said, "That's a good idea. But let's not talk about the fact that we can't find the way back. Even if we find it and bring people from our world here, how can you be sure that the palace master of the unparalleled palace will accept them and let them stay here? If this place really becomes a good spiritual island, there will definitely be countless people scrambling for it. By then, it won't be easy to come in again." Lu Yi said, "You don't have to worry about this. I can still guarantee this." His words should still be effective on Chu Shen's side. Taking a step back, even if it didn't work, he could still make use of the minor constellation hall to build another spiritual island. Now, everyone thought that it was the unparalleled island that was reincarnating. But in reality, it was the minor constellation hall that was working. With this treasure in hand, Lu Yi could reincarnate any deserted island he wanted. Tang Jun did not know the relationship between Chu Shen and Lu Yi. However, Chu Shen had previously said that this was the place where a very important guest of his stayed. From the looks of it, the relationship between the two of them should not be simple. he pondered for a while and said slowly, "If you want me to stay here, I can do that. But I have a condition." Lu Yi rolled his eyes and looked at him. He wanted to ignore him. However, on second thought, to what extent the minor constellation hall could transform the unparalleled island, he needed a long time to observe. Yu Yao was not easy to find. Tang Jun was the only person he could find and trust. With Tang Jun here, they could avoid a lot of trouble. Even if they were attacked, they would still have the ability to fight back. Therefore, for the time being, he really had to appease him. "I need a quota for the cultivators of the Qing Li Dao world to enter the unparalleled continent to cultivate at a fixed time." Lu Yi looked at him with a strange expression. The cultivators of the Qing Li Dao world want to enter the unparalleled continent to cultivate? Why is that? It was not that they could not go to the unparalleled continent, but what could they cultivate there? The corpse clan was rampant everywhere. In the future, the foundation of the unparalleled continent was bound to be swallowed by the 9 states. When that time came, the foundation of the world would decline, and sooner or later, it would become an ordinary world without a cultivation environment. Therefore, Lu Yi did not understand the purpose of Tang Jun's condition. Chapter 1475. There's something wrong with the Qing Li Dao world. Tang Jun did not intend to hide it. It was not a secret, and if Li Taibai agreed to his terms, he would not be able to hide it. After his explanation, Lu Yi finally understood what Tang Jun wanted to do. It had been almost 2,000 years since the Qing Li Dao world was promoted to a large realm. Qin Yuandai and Tang Jun, who were killed by him, were considered the first batch of people to benefit from it. As their realm was promoted, they broke through to the constellation and slowly grew to the Yuyao realm. However, after so many years, although there were many constellations in the Qing Li Dao world, no one else was promoted to the Yuyao realm. Something was obviously wrong. After Tang Jun and Qin Yuandai, only Wuxia was promoted to the Yuyao realm. However, Wuxia was able to do so because he had participated in the Battle of the Deity Ocean at the Reincarnation Tree. He survived the Battle of the Deity Ocean and obtained the opportunity to be promoted to the constellation, so his cultivation path was smooth. Since many years ago, Tang Jun had sensed the problem of this realm. Unfortunately, he did not know the cause until one day, when an expert passed by the Qing Li Dao world and gave him some pointers. Tang Jun then realized the truth. According to the expert, there was something wrong with the Qing Li Dao world. Therefore, after cultivators were promoted to the constellation, no matter how talented they could not break through to the Yuyao realm. In other words, cultivators who obtained the opportunity to be promoted in the Qing Li Dao world could only cultivate to the later stage of the constellation. The Qing Li Dao world was not the only realm like this in the galaxy. There were other similar realms, but there were not many of them. To solve this problem, the only way was to send their cultivators to other realms to cultivate and break through. This way, they would have a chance to go further. This was also the reason why Tang Jun had followed Qin Yuandai to the Wuxia continent. At that time, he thought that if he could take over the Wuxia continent, then the cultivators in this realm would have a way out. However, he did not expect Qin Yuandai to be killed by a red talisman. In the process of chasing after Lu Yi, he was swept into the worm path and ended up in the Wanxiang galaxy. Now that Lu Yi had a favor to ask of him and the two of them were in the same boat, Tang Jun felt that Li Taibai would not refuse such a small request. Of course, Lu Yi would not refuse, but he had a strange expression. "Are you sure you want to send your cultivators to the Wuxia continent to cultivate?" Tang Jun said, "This old man doesn't need many quotas. 1 person per year. This isn't too much, right?" If they really wanted to release them, they would definitely choose cultivators with outstanding talent who had the potential to become Yuyao. There could not be too many of them, so 1 person per year was definitely enough to satisfy the needs of the Qing Li Dao world. It was equivalent to taking up another person's opportunity to be promoted to a constellation. Not at all. Lu Yi nodded. Not to mention 1 person per year, even if it were 10 or 100 people, it would not matter. The Wuxia continent itself was not a good place. His roots were in the 9 states, but there was no need to tell Tang Junyan about this. As for how Tang Jun was going to explain to him when he found out the truth, that was a matter for the future. After the two of them reached an agreement, Tang Jun said happily, "If we can find the way back, we can join forces with the Jade Conch. We can definitely occupy a place on the Vientiane Sea." It was difficult to establish a place on the Vientiane Sea with just the Qingli Dao world and the 9 states. There were only 2 Yu Yao in the Qingli Dao world, and none in the 9 states. Therefore, if they really wanted a place on the Vientiane Sea, they had to borrow the power of the Jade Conch. Since they came from the same galaxy, they had to act as a team. This was how many weak galaxies survived on the Vientiane Sea. "Do you have any leads on the way back?" Lu Yi asked. Tang Jun shook his head. "I have paid attention to it, but unfortunately, there were no valuable clues. I also went to the insect path a few days ago. It was still a mess. It looks like it won't be stabilized in a short period of time." Speaking of this, Tang Jun sighed helplessly. The galaxy was too big and there were many galaxies. The Jade Conch was remote and unknown. No one had heard of it unless they crossed paths with the Jade Conch. Trying to find out information about the Jade Conch in an environment like the Vientiane Sea was like looking for a needle in a haystack. The old man and the young man were no longer in the mood to chat. Tang Jun quickly left. Not long after Tang Jun left, Lu Yi felt that the restriction he set at the entrance of the cave was disturbed again. This disturbance was not malicious. It was like someone was knocking on the door. Obviously, someone was here to visit. He frowned slightly and used his divine telekinesis to investigate. He found that the person standing at the entrance of the cave was a very petite woman. He had never seen her before. However, someone who would appear on the Peerless Island at this time should be someone recruited by Chu Shen. Her cultivation was not bad. She was in the late stage of the constellation realm. Lu Yi did not know why she was here. He thought about it and opened the restriction. The woman stepped inside. Soon she was in front of Lu Yi. In the dim environment, the woman sized him up with a pair of big bright eyes. She seemed to be curious. "What's the matter?" Lu Yi asked. The woman shook her head and said, "You must be Palace Master Chu's friend? My name is Bansi. I was recruited by Palace Master Chu. I will be living on the Peerless Island from now on." She acted as if she was familiar with him. Lu Yi was confused. He had no idea what she wanted to do. Bansi asked again, "What's your name?" Lu Yi thought about it and said his name, Li Tai Bai. Bansi nodded slightly. "I will remember it." After she finished speaking, she turned around and walked away leisurely with her hands behind her back. This woman, what was she doing? However, Lu Yi guessed that she was just curious about who was living here, so she came to take a look. It was normal. After Bansi left, Lu Yi took out a musical note. He had 2 musical notes in his hand. One belonged to Li Tai Bai, and the other belonged to Fa Wuzuan. There were not many people he could contact on Fa Wuzuan's musical note. He was going to contact Spectre. During this period of time, with the help of the talent tree's 3 transformations, he had finished deducing the new concealment spirit pattern. Now, there was an additional spirit pattern on the burning leaf of the talent tree. The cost was not small. The fuel consumption of the talent tree was great. However, compared to the time saved, it was nothing. The effect of the new concealment was undoubtedly much stronger than before. Although it might not be comparable to when Spectre activated the ghost pattern, it was not far away. However, concealment always needed to be complemented with aura concealment. Simply concealing one's body was useless. The more powerful a cultivator was, the stronger their spiritual sense would be. If one's body was concealed, one would be easily discovered if one did not conceal their aura. Spectre was undoubtedly proficient in concealment. It was a pity that Lu Yi couldn't pry the breath concealment part of the ghost pattern from her last time. It didn't seem to be a matter of money. Lu Yi was going to try again. If it really didn't work, he could let Spectre inscribe the breath concealment part of the ghost pattern for him to see. It was the same. He didn't have to look at her body. He sent out the message, but there was no response. He didn't know what this woman was doing. After a while, the musical note suddenly vibrated. Lu Yi checked and found that it was indeed Spectre who replied. However, there was no specific information, only a location. Obviously, she wanted him to meet at this location. Lu Yi took out the star map and compared it. After confirming the location, he immediately got up, constructed the spirit pattern, and put on the new concealment. He quietly left the cave and rushed out. Tang Jun, who was setting up the formation, seemed to have sensed something. He glanced in the direction Lu Yi had left. On the other side, the woman named Bansi also raised her eyes and looked in the same direction calmly. After leaving the Wushuang Island, Lu Yi took out the star boat and rushed to the rendezvous point. The location Spectre sent was not too close to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Even though Lu Yi hurried there with the help of the star boat, it still took him 2 full days. There was a huge floating continent here, which seemed to be the debris of a collapsed dead star. The whole floating continent was shaped like a big bowl, with a huge pit in the middle. Lu Yi put away his star boat from afar, changed into Fa Wuzuan's appearance and clothes, and hid his body and breath, and rushed in that direction. He wasn't worried that Spectre would ambush him here. He didn't have much contact with this woman. He knew she wasn't a good person, but he didn't think she would be so despicable. However, Fa Wuzuan's identity was a sensitive matter, so he still had to be careful. He circled around the floating continent from afar, but he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. He also couldn't find any trace of Spectre. "Where is she?" Lu Yi transmitted. Before long, he received Spectre's reply. "Coming." After waiting for a while, he saw a figure rushing in his direction. Who else could it be but Spectre? However, when Lu Yi saw the scene behind Spectre, his eyes couldn't help but twitch. This was because he discovered that Spectre was actually being hunted down by someone. And the person chasing after her was Yu Yao. In an instant, Lu Yi saw through Spectre's intentions. No wonder she would choose this place as the rendezvous point. When he contacted her 2 days ago, she was already being hunted down. This woman was really something. Yu Yao was chasing after her, yet she managed to drag it out until now. However, from the looks of it, she didn't seem to be having a good time either. She was in a very sorry state. The fact that a late-stage constellation realm cultivator could last so long under Yu Yao's pursuit was already a testament to her powerful foundation. She had summoned him here either to divert the trouble away or to join forces with him to kill Yu Yao. However, even though Lu Yi had recently advanced to the late-stage constellation realm, he knew that he was no match for Yu Yao. This was because the nature of the energy in a constellation realm cultivator's body was completely different from that of Yu Yao's. Back then, the 3 of them had joined forces to fight the withered skeleton general. Their opponent was a weakened Yu Yao. Even after forming a formation, they still had to expend a lot of effort to kill her. Now, the one chasing after Spectre was a mid-stage Yu Yao, who was many times stronger than the withered skeleton general. How could the 2 of them possibly defeat her? Lu Yi couldn't even understand how Spectre had managed to last until now. After seeing the situation clearly, Lu Yi immediately took out his star boat and prepared to leave this troublesome place. End of chapter. Chapter 1476. Lu Yi was more or less on guard against Ghost. He didn't think she would be so despicable as to ambush him here. In fact, Ghost didn't do that. However, Lu Yi didn't expect her to be the one being hunted. Seeing Lu Yi take out his star boat, Ghost panicked and transmitted her voice. "Don't run. Fight him with me." "Fight my ass." Lu Yi ignored her. The star boat slowly picked up speed and turned into a streak of light that shot into the distance. Ghost couldn't help but sigh. "Since that's the case, don't blame me for what I do." Lu Yi suddenly had an ominous feeling. Sure enough, in the next moment, he heard Ghost shouting behind him, "Fa Wuzuan, save me." Yu Yao, who was chasing Ghost, couldn't help but feel shocked when she heard the name Fa Wuzuan. The reason he was chasing Ghost was because she had killed a disciple he thought highly of. Although Ghost's cultivation base was inferior to his, her ability to escape was top-notch. He had been chasing her for several days, but he hadn't been able to catch her. However, Ghost was on the verge of collapsing. In half a day at most, she would be cornered. Yu Yao didn't pay much attention to the person who had appeared on Ghost's path of escape. While chasing Ghost, she had encountered some cultivators passing by. However, those cultivators had all avoided her, just like this person. However, when Ghost called out Fa Wuzuan's name, he couldn't help but pay attention. This person was an expert from a faction stationed on the Myriad Manifestation Sea. His faction was currently researching how to mass-produce twin chi connecting formation disks. Unfortunately, they hadn't made much progress. Since this thing came from Fa Wuzuan, he would definitely be able to mass-produce it. Every faction was very interested in a treasure that could change the situation of the cultivation world. Many people were looking for Fa Wuzuan. Unfortunately, after the chaotic battle, Fa Wuzuan seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. There was no trace of him. Yu Yao didn't expect to run into Fa Wuzuan here. When he looked carefully, he found that the figure was indeed very similar. He had never seen Fa Wuzuan before. However, during the auction, someone had secretly taken a photo of Fa Wuzuan's appearance, so he had seen him before. If this person was really Fa Wuzuan, he couldn't miss this chance. Seeing that Lu Ye's starboat was getting faster and faster, Yu Yao made a prompt decision. She raised her hand and shot out a beam of golden light. Standing on the deck of the starboat, Lu Yi summoned all of his spiritual power. Suddenly, he felt a strong sense of danger. Without any hesitation, he spun around and slashed out with his saber. Not only did this saber strike have the shadow of the tyrant saber art, but it also had the traces of the small saber inheritance. In addition to his current late-stage constellation realm cultivation, it could be said to be the strongest saber strike he had executed so far. The blade struck the golden light, but Lu Yi didn't feel the slightest bit of force. Just as he was thinking that things weren't looking good, the golden light had already circled around the mountain pan blade and was heading straight for his face. Lu Ye's body leaned to the side, and the golden light swept past his ear, causing a few strands of hair to flutter in the air. The golden light did not attack him again. Instead, it flew back in a circle. Lu Yi also pushed the starboat to the limit, and it turned into a streak of light that shot into the distance. In his field of vision, Yu Yao's figure was rapidly shrinking. He inwardly rejoiced that he had acted fast enough. Otherwise, if Yu Yao had caught up to him, it would have been troublesome. However, if that had really happened, he could have used the Void Spirit Mark to escape. Yu Yao might not have been able to do anything to him. Back when he was in the early stage of the Constellation Realm, hadn't he also used this move to evade Tang Jun's pursuit? When he turned around and saw that Yu Yao had no intention of pursuing him, Lu Yi couldn't help but frown slightly. He had a feeling that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Watching Lu Ye's departing figure, Yu Yao looked around but didn't see any trace of Spectre. However, he knew that Spectre was definitely hiding somewhere nearby. Spectre had done the same thing several times during their previous pursuit. It had taken him a lot of effort to find her. However, now wasn't the time to deal with this ghoul. In terms of value, Fa Wuzuan was much more valuable than this ghoul. Obediently go to Myriad World Island to receive your punishment within 10 days. Otherwise, I won't spare you even if you're that person's disciple. After speaking, Yu Yao lowered her head and looked at the item in her hand. It was half a rope. It was completely golden. It was the original body of the golden light that had attacked Lu Yi. He had thought that Lu Yi wouldn't be able to block his attack. However, he had underestimated Lu Ye's strength and reaction speed. His casual attack hadn't been able to do much to Lu Yi. Therefore, when he saw that he couldn't stop Lu Yi from escaping, he settled for the next best thing and took something from Lu Yi. At this moment, there were a few broken strands of hair wrapped around the rope. Yu Yao looked reluctant to part with it, but she still steeled her heart. She clenched her fist, and as her spiritual power surged, the rope suddenly released a golden light. Then, it began to burn as if it was on fire. This half of the golden rope was a treasure at the level of a magic treasure. Moreover, it was a rare treasure. After being burned, it was naturally destroyed. However, compared to Fa Wuzuan's value, what was a magic treasure? A moment later, Yu Yao opened her hand. The golden rope had disappeared, and in its place was a golden mark on her palm. He looked at it for a moment, then chased after it. Moments after he left, a ghostly figure suddenly appeared in the nearby starry sky. It was Spectre, who had been hiding here all this time. She looked in the direction Yu Yao had left in and knew that something was wrong. She hurriedly sent a message to Lu Yi. I don't know what kind of secret technique that person used. I'm afraid he can track your whereabouts. Be careful. She had no choice but to involve Fa Wuzuan in this dispute. After all, she had no way of escaping from the pursuit of a mid-stage Yu Yao. 2 days ago, Fa Wuzuan had sent her a message, so she took the opportunity to give him a rendezvous point. She had hoped to join forces with Fa Wuzuan to resist the enemy, but who would have thought that it wouldn't work out? However, if Fa Wuzuan was really captured or killed because of this, she would feel guilty. No matter what, Fa Wuzuan had been a great help in the battle against the dried skeleton general. She was naturally willing to give Fa Wuzuan a kind warning. However, she was still a little worried, so she silently followed the mid-stage Yu Yao from afar. Almost as soon as the golden rope burned, Lu Yi felt that something was wrong. It was as if something was secretly watching him. No matter how fast he drove the star boat, he couldn't shake it off. Originally, he wasn't sure what was going on, but after seeing Spectre's message, Lu Yi realized that Yu Yao hadn't given up on him. Instead, she had used some kind of secret technique to track his whereabouts. I'll deal with you later, Lu Yi replied viciously. Originally, he had planned to return to the 10,000 Elephant Sea directly, but now he couldn't. If Yu Yao really had the ability to track his whereabouts, Peerless Island couldn't be exposed. Hiding on the 10,000 Elephant Island was one way. No one could attack him there, but he couldn't hide on the 10,000 Elephant Island forever. Moreover, he couldn't determine how long this secret technique would last. Spectre could feel the anger in Lu Ye's heart, so she could only reply, I didn't have a choice. I originally wanted to join forces with you, but who knew you would run away so quickly? I was wrong. If you survive, I'll make it up to you later. He didn't need to think about making it up to her for the time being. What he needed to think about now was how to solve his current predicament. Just as he was thinking, the feeling of being watched suddenly intensified. Lu Yi turned around and saw a dot of light rapidly approaching him from the distance. It was much faster than he was. Surprisingly, Yu Yao was also chasing after him on her star boat. Although they were both using star boats, Yu Yao's cultivation was higher, and her star boat was better than his. If this continued, it would only be a matter of time before she caught up to him. Lu Yi could only raise his hand and send out a flying artifact. At the same time, he drove the star boat with all his might to stall for time. Less than an hour later, the distance between them had almost reached a critical point. Sensing the surge of Yu Yao's spiritual energy behind him, Lu Yi realized that she was about to make a move. He didn't even bother with the star boat. He directly activated the Void Spirit Mark and left. Yu Yao, who was about to make a move, frowned. Even she couldn't see how Lu Yi had disappeared. She quickly lowered her head and looked at her palm. To her surprise, she discovered that the golden mark was pointing in another direction. Based on her senses, she could sense that Fa Wuzuan was already thousands of kilometers away. How did he do it? She couldn't possibly say that Fa Wuzuan's star boat had a teleportation formation that connected it to another place, right? The secret technique's guidance couldn't be wrong. She quickly changed direction and flew in the direction the mark was pointing. In that direction, Lu Yi had already sent out a few flying artifacts in advance. He was also fleeing with all his might. However, not long after, he sensed that Yu Yao was already chasing after him. He had no choice but to activate the Void Spirit Mark again and change his position. After several times of fleeing, Lu Yi discovered that no matter what he did, he couldn't shake off Yu Yao's pursuit. It seemed that unless he killed Yu Yao this time, he wouldn't be able to shake her off. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Yi made his decision. He set his sights on a desolate star and flew toward it. He hurriedly broke into the desolate star. As soon as he arrived, he heard a shout from behind him, "You can't escape. Surrender obediently and I won't make things difficult for you. But if I capture you, you'll have to suffer a little." Lu Yi naturally ignored him. Seeing that he didn't have much time left, he couldn't afford to be picky. He directly took out the Azure Sea Conch, poured his spiritual energy into it, and blew it. At the same time, he stared in the direction Yu Yao was coming from with a seemingly panicked expression. The sound of the conch reverberated, and a blue light flashed. Yu Yao had already flown into the desolate star. She saw Lu Ye's actions from afar. Although she didn't know what he was going to do, she still pressed her palm down from afar. A huge palm print appeared out of thin air. It descended as if the sky had collapsed, instantly engulfing Lu Ye's figure. Dust flew everywhere. The scene was chaotic. End of chapter. Chapter 1477. On the desolate star, Yu Yao, who had chased after Lu Xian, looked down coldly. Her expression suddenly changed because she sensed that Fa Wuzuan's aura had disappeared without a trace. She hurriedly waved her sleeves and the dust in the air dissipated, revealing the scene below. Sure enough, Fa Wuzuan was nowhere to be seen. There was only something that looked like a door standing there. Did Fa Wuzuan use some method to create this door? What kind of magical method was this? Did Fa Wuzuan's repeated teleportations have something to do with this door? Where did this door lead to? Many thoughts flashed through his mind and he quickly looked at his palm. He frowned when he saw what was on his palm. This was because the golden imprint on his palm was rapidly dimming, and it looked like it was about to disappear. The secret technique he used with the help of the broken golden rope was extremely powerful. As long as they were in the same space and weren't too far apart, he could use the mark to investigate. Now that the mark was rapidly disappearing, it could only mean one thing. Fa Wuzuan had either entered another space or was very far away from him, so far away that the secret technique would lose its effect. He faintly felt that it was the former because the door didn't look very stable. It couldn't lead too far away. In other words, Fa Wuzuan must have used this door to hide in another space. Lu Yi, of course, wasn't in another space. The door formed by the Azure Sea Snail allowed him to enter the Mermaid Clan's territory. Strictly speaking, they were still in the same space. However, because of the 10,000 Elephant Sea's water, the space under the sea and outside the sea were two different worlds. This caused the secret technique to lose its effect. The man couldn't help but hesitate. In the current situation, he only had two choices. He could chase after Fa Wuzuan through the door or wait here. Chasing after Fa Wuzuan was risky. No one knew what was going on the other side of the door. Waiting here was even more unreliable because no one could be sure if Fa Wuzuan would come out again. Perhaps he would leave from another place. After a moment of hesitation, the man made his decision. His body flashed and he rushed into the door. Fa Wuzuan was just a constellation, and he was Yu Yao. If Fa Wuzuan could go, he could go. Even if Fa Wuzuan ambushed him, he was confident he could resolve it. Meeting Fa Wuzuan this time was a coincidence. If he missed this chance, it would not be easy to find Fa Wuzuan again. As long as he could take him down, he would be able to mass-produce the twin chi connecting branch array disk. The benefits it would bring to the faction behind Fa Wuzuan would be unimaginable. On the other side, Lu Yi appeared in front of the heavenly spiral hall in a sorry state. The two mere people who had been guarding here under Bai Lu's orders immediately came forward to greet him. Unexpectedly, before they could even get close, Lu Yi madly urged his spiritual power, causing a rumbling sound. The two mermaids were stunned. They didn't know what Lu Yi was doing, but Lu Yi had already rushed in front of them. She grabbed one of them with each hand and threw them far away. Then, she turned around and stared at the door from which she had come. He had been forced to use the Azure Sea Snail to come here because he was betting that Yu Yao wouldn't give up on him so easily. If Yu Yao was confident in her strength and came here to kill him, then that would naturally be good for him. However, if she was a cautious person and didn't come after him, then Lu Ye's plan would be ruined. The door couldn't be maintained for long. Once it disappeared, he would have to swim out of this place if he wanted to leave. His previous experience had taught Lu Yi that with his current cultivation, it was very unreliable for him to swim out of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He might even encounter Yu Yao or a radiant star beast along the way and become food for them. Therefore, Lu Yi could only hope that Yu Yao would come after him. The short wait seemed to stretch on endlessly. Fortunately, not long after, the door suddenly began to vibrate. Lu Ye's heart settled. He knew that this was a sign that someone was passing through the door. Yu Yao really did come after him. He dashed out and arrived at the back of the door. Just as he stood there, he saw Yu Yao, who had been chasing after him, reveal herself. She was a cautious person. She had rashly entered an unknown place, so she had already activated a protective barrier around her body. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of magic artifact this was, but a silver belt coiled around her body like a silver dragon. Lu Yi took advantage of the fact that this person had just appeared and frantically poured his spiritual energy into the mountain plate saber. His flesh and blood vibrated rhythmically. At this moment, there was nothing else in his eyes but Yu Yao, who was chasing after him. Saber lights flashed in an endless stream. The faint sound of crashing waves could be heard. Yu Yao abruptly turned her head to look. In her field of vision, boundless saber lights attacked her. However, she could sense that the saber lights were not just saber lights but more like waves. The person snorted coldly. There is a fundamental difference between a constellation and Yu Yao. How dare you act so impudently? He raised a hand and pushed lightly. The saber lights shattered. Then, he turned his palm into a claw and grabbed at Lu Yi. He thought that he would be able to catch Lu Yi head-on. Who knew that after the shattered saber lights, there would be even more saber lights? The person's eyes were filled with surprise. It was too late to retreat now. Moreover, he didn't feel the need to retreat when he was up against a constellation. He channeled his spiritual energy and continued to reach forward. The sound of crashing waves grew more ferocious. It was as if a tsunami was covering the sky. The saber lights turned into waves, layer upon layer, endless. 10-layered waves. 100-layered waves. 1,000-layered waves. 10,000-layered waves. Recently, Lu Yi had been comprehending the saber techniques in the Dagger Legacy. Although he had gained some insights, he still felt that he was missing something. It was only now that he was facing Yu Yao that he finally realized that the elegance of the saber techniques in the Legacy was just a facade. The true essence was its endless momentum. There was indeed a fundamental difference between a constellation's strength and Yu Yao's. It was like the difference between a handful of gravel and a solid rock. Once they collided, the constellation's strength would be easily defeated. However, if one layer of strength could not withstand it, what about 10 layers? What about 100 layers, 1,000 layers, or even 10,000 layers? The saber techniques in the Dagger Legacy might not be that profound or complicated, but this saber technique seemed to be specially designed for the weak to defeat the strong. It was especially suitable for a battle between a constellation and Yu Yao. It was exactly what Lu Yi needed to face now. As Yu Yao's hand reached out, the layers of saber lights shattered continuously. It seemed to have no effect, but Lu Yi could sense that the might of his opponent's hand was continuously weakening as the saber lights shattered. In other words, the 10,000-layered waves had indeed weakened the power of his attack. Even the defensive power on his opponent's arm had dimmed somewhat. If his opponent had not activated the power of his defensive Dharma treasure in advance, he would have definitely suffered a small loss. However, the difference in their strength was not small. In a short moment, Lu Ye's endless saber lights were broken. His opponent's hand pressed against Lu Ye's chest, and his transcendence energy burst forth. Even though Lu Yi activated the Holy Guardian Spirit rune when he saw that the situation was bad, it shattered. Lu Ye's chest caved in, and he felt his heart stop beating for a moment. He was sent flying and crashed heavily into the wall of the heavenly conch hall behind him. There was a sweet taste in his throat, and the taste of blood filled his mouth. He was secretly shocked. Yu Yao was indeed Yu Yao. Moreover, she was at the mid-stage. Her strength was not something he could fight against at the moment. He was shocked, but Yu Yao, who was chasing after him, was even more shocked. This was because he had never seen a constellation that could withstand one of his attacks. With this strength, it would have been no problem for him to take first place when the constellation hall opened. But for some reason, Fa Wuzuan disappeared after the chaotic battle. Suddenly, there was a strange commotion, followed by a cold shout. Who dares to be impudent in my heavenly conch palace? Lu Yi was overjoyed when he heard this voice. When he first appeared, he madly circulated his spiritual energy and caused a commotion, all for the sake of alerting the experts of the mermaid race. Now, it seemed that his plan had succeeded. Great Elder Yen Miao had arrived. Moreover, he could sense powerful auras belonging to Yu Yao rushing over from all directions. Although the mermaid race did not have any Sunshine Realm experts, they still had a few Yu Yao. At the very least, Lu Yi knew that the 5 great elders were all from the Yu Yao realm. As for whether there were other Yu Yao, Lu Yi did not know, but there should be some. How could a mid-stage Yu Yao come to the mermaid race's heavenly conch palace and behave so atrociously? When Great Elder shouted, he used the mermaid race's language. Lu Yi could resonate with him, but the Yu Yao cultivator could not. Naturally, he could not understand what Yen Miao was shouting. But he was not stupid. When he sensed the auras of the Yu Yao, he immediately knew that something was wrong. He finally understood why Fa Wuzuan had come here. It turned out that there was someone protecting him. It was no longer realistic to want to capture Fa Wuzuan. The Yu Yao cultivator made a prompt decision to return through the door. At the same time, Lu Yi, who had slid down from the wall of the heavenly conch palace, was madly rushing over. The door had not disappeared yet. If the enemy retreated, it would be difficult to kill him again. If the enemy did not die, he would be able to track his whereabouts with that secret technique. Lu Yi would not be able to live in peace in the future. What he did not know was that when he entered this place with the help of the heavenly conch, the enemy's secret technique had already lost its effect. Lu Yi only had one thought now. No matter what, he had to stop the enemy from leaving. But the enemy was right beside the door. It would take time for him to rush over. How could he make it in time? Moreover, even if he did rush over, the difference in strength between them was obvious. Lu Yi might not be able to stop him. Just as the enemy was about to leave, the green door shook again. Lu Yi was stunned. He immediately realized that someone else was coming. He did not know who it was. Perhaps someone was passing by and saw the door he had left on the desolate planet. Out of curiosity, they came in to take a look. But in the next moment, he knew he was wrong. The person who had come in through the door was not just anyone, but Ghost. When she appeared, she looked like she was sneaking around. She even hid herself immediately. Lu Yi almost laughed out loud. Good would be rewarded with good, and evil with evil. The heavenly Tao was a cycle of reincarnation. Who would the heavens spare? He had suffered such an unexpected calamity because of Ghost. This woman was clearly being hunted down, but she still asked him to meet up. She even wanted to divert the trouble away. But now, she had barged into a tiger's den. End of chapter. Chapter 1478. Spectre felt that she had been extremely unlucky recently. She had killed a random guy, but it turned out that he had a mid-stage Yu Yao backing him. In the end, she had been chased to the point where she had nowhere to run. She had finally managed to lure Yu Yao away with great difficulty, and now she had a chance to catch her breath. After Yu Yao had chased after Fa Wuzuan, she had felt somewhat uneasy. She had followed them from afar, hoping to see if Fa Wuzuan could shake them off. In the end, they were all flying on their planetary ships. She couldn't make too much of a commotion, so she was soon left behind. Helpless, she could only find a desolate star to hide in and heal her injuries. Before his injuries were fully healed, he heard someone shouting something like, "You can't escape. Surrender obediently and I won't make things difficult for you. But if I capture you, you'll have to suffer a little." When Spectre heard that, she realized that it was Yu Yao's voice. She immediately understood that Fa Wuzuan had also hidden on this desolate star and lured Yu Yao here. She even suspected that Fa Wuzuan knew she was here and deliberately lured Yu Yao here. However, she quickly realized that it was just a coincidence. When she sneaked out of her hiding place and looked around, she found the door Lu Yi had left behind. She was curious and didn't know where the door led. She also didn't see Fa Wuzuan or Yu Yao around. Even though she knew that it wasn't easy to barge into an unknown door like this, as a woman, she couldn't hold back her curiosity. After a great struggle in her mind, she stepped into the door. She was very experienced in this kind of thing. As soon as she stepped into the door and steadied herself, she immediately activated her concealment and aura concealment ghostly tattoo. Then she saw a familiar face. Who else could it be but Yu Yao, who had been chasing her all this time? She didn't know what Yu Yao had encountered, but she looked a little flustered. When she saw Spectre, she was clearly startled. Then she wantonly raised her hand and slapped down. Spectre didn't have time to retreat. She cried out in alarm, and under the veil covering her face, she opened her mouth and shot out a beam of blood-red light, hitting the other party's palm. Spectre didn't know what method she used, but Yu Yao's attack didn't work. With a loud bang, Yu Yao staggered a few steps back. On the other hand, Spectre's aura was weak and her hair was disheveled. It seemed that the attack just now had damaged her vitality greatly. It made sense. A late-stage Xingqiu had used a technique that could repel Yu Yao. Even if Yu Yao wasn't prepared, she must have paid a price. This was her strongest life-saving technique. After the attack, Ghost felt dizzy and instinctively retreated, wanting to leave this troublesome place. Then, just as she moved, she felt her arm tighten. She looked over in a daze and saw Fa Wuzuan appear in front of her and grab her arm. Ghost opened her mouth, and then her expression changed drastically. How could Lu Yi pay any attention to her? Since she's already here, she can forget about leaving. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and flung Yu Ling away. He did not care whether Yu Ling was dead or alive. He pushed his saber again, and saber lights shot towards Yu Yao. Yu Yao had only just regained her footing when the saber light enveloped her. Although she quickly dissolved it, it was too late for her to escape through the door. Several figures arrived one after another. They were the Yu Yao elders of the Merfolk clan. As they appeared, ethereal singing could be heard. Yu Yao was shocked. She didn't expect there to be merfolk here. Moreover, it looked like there was a group of them. Lu Yi had already retreated. Bai Lu came to his side and asked with concern, "Li Tai Bai, are you all right? What happened?" Lu Yi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and shook his head. "I'm fine. I was hunted down and had no choice but to escape here. I'll come back and apologize to the Great Elder and the others. I've caused you trouble this time." Bai Lu shook her head. "It's no trouble. As long as you're fine." Lu Yi glanced at the crumbling door. "It's too late. I'll leave first. I'll come back in a few days." Just as he moved, someone grabbed his ankle. He looked down and saw that Yu Yu, who was so weak that she looked like she only had one breath left, had appeared at his feet. She pouted and hugged his ankle with both hands. She looked up at him pitifully. "Take me with you." Lu Yi and Bai Lu were communicating through telepathy. Yu Yu couldn't hear them, but her eyes were sharp. She could see that Lu Yi wanted to leave. She didn't know where this place was, but there was a group of merfolk living here. They didn't look weak either. Fa Wuzuan was obviously on good terms with this group of merfolk. If she wanted to leave, she could only ask Fa Wuzuan to take her with him. Lu Yi pointed at Yu Yu on the ground and said to Bai Lu, "Keep an eye on this person. She's a ghost cultivator. Don't let her recover too quickly." "Is she an enemy?" Bai Lu asked. Lu Yi didn't know how to identify Yu Yu. He thought for a moment and said, "Not really, but she's not a friend either." He pulled his foot out of Yu Yu's grasp and glanced at the battlefield. His heart settled and he quickly rushed toward the door. Yu Yu's plaintive voice came from behind him. "Fa Daddy, take me with you. I'm so scared here alone. What's the use of calling me Daddy now?" Lu Yi didn't even look back as he entered the door. When he disappeared, the door also disappeared. In front of the Celestial Spiral Palace, several Yu Yao of the Merfolk clan were engaged in a fierce battle with the enemy. With the assistance of the mysterious song, they easily gained control of the situation. The Merfolk clan showed no mercy and killed Yu Yao on the spot. Although the first elder and the others were courteous to Lu Yi, they didn't have a good impression of the entire human race. Their clan had fallen into their current predicament because of a powerful human. On the desolate star, Lu Yi reappeared. He wasn't in a hurry to return to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. The Azure Sea conch had a cooldown time, and it would take a few more days. He found a secluded place nearby and set up a formation to treat his injuries first. A day later, he finally set off for the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He originally wanted to make a deal with Yu and see if he could see the aura concealing ghostly tattoo on her body. If that didn't work, he could ask Yu to engrave it. At most, he would just have to pay some spirit jades. Who would have thought that he would be dragged into such trouble? Although the trouble had been resolved, he still had to finish what he started. He had lost his planetary boat. When he was being chased, he didn't have time to take care of it. Fortunately, Lu Yi was quite rich now. He didn't care if he lost a planetary boat of poor quality. He could always buy a better one later. He returned to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. When he was still some distance away from the Peerless Island, he found an opportunity and dove into the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He swam all the way to the Peerless Island and arrived at the place where he had set up the Minor Constellation Palace. The Minor Constellation Hall continued to reverse the seawater, turning it into pure starry sky energy. Bubbles of various sizes continued to rise. Lu Yi thought about it for a moment, then raised his hand and placed it on the Minor Constellation Hall, increasing its reverse seawater efficiency by a notch. Since he wanted to observe whether the construction of the spiritual island was going smoothly, increasing the efficiency would save him some time. Immediately after, he activated the power of the Minor Constellation Palace and opened the door to the main hall of the Minor Constellation Palace. The Azure Sea Conk's door could not be maintained for long. The further the distance, the shorter the time it could be maintained. However, Lu Yi did not know how long the door of the Minor Constellation Palace could be maintained. He wanted to give it a try. If this door could be maintained, he would no longer have to worry about being trapped under the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Just like just now, he didn't have to rush back at all. Even if the Azure Sea Conk's door disappeared, he could still return to the Peerless Island through the Minor Constellation Palace. Maintaining the door required energy. However, the 10,000 Elephant Sea's water was limitless. As long as the Minor Constellation Palace could maintain the reversing seawater, the energy required to maintain the door was negligible. After he was done, Lu Yi swam out and returned to the Peerless Island from where he had entered the sea. After a few days, the starry sky energy on the island had undoubtedly become denser. It seemed like the idea of using the Minor Constellation Palace to construct the spiritual island could be implemented. Moreover, the changes here had undoubtedly attracted the attention of some cultivators passing by. This was because Lu Yi noticed that someone was secretly observing from afar. He secretly rejoiced that he had invited Tang Jun over to take charge. Otherwise, without Yu Yao, it would be easy for others to target this spiritual island that had been revived. With Tang Jun around, he would be able to reduce a lot of unnecessary trouble. The facilities on the island were more or less completed. To the Constellation cultivators, this was not a difficult task. The Constellation cultivators who had been recruited earlier were undoubtedly more expectant than when they first came here. When they had first arrived, the Peerless Island was just a deserted island. However, the island was now reviving. The energy on the island was getting denser by the day. This was great news for them. This was because they could save a lot of spirit jades if they cultivated on such a spiritual island. Generally speaking, it was very difficult for early constellation stage cultivators like them, who had no background, to establish themselves on a spiritual island. None of the spiritual islands would recruit people like them. There were already too many cultivators in their own star system, so who would recruit outsiders? Tang Jun was still presiding over the construction of the Great Array. However, he had encountered a problem. Therefore, not long after Lu Yi returned to the Peerless Island, Chu Shun came looking for him. He sat in front of Lu Yi with a look of embarrassment and stammered for a while. Lu Yi glanced at him and roughly knew what he was here for. He directly asked, "Are you lacking spirit jades?" Chu Shun blushed and took the opportunity to flatter him. "My parents gave birth to me. Senior brother knows me best." The spirit jades he had were the 500,000 that Lu Yi had given him after the auction. However, he had spent them all recently. To set up a great array that could envelop the entire spiritual island and protect it well, it was not something that could be done with a few 100,000 spirit jades. Chu Xin had no other choice but to look for Lu Yi. This was because he knew that Boss Fa was very rich. End of chapter. Chapter 1479. Inside the cave, Lu Yi took out a storage ring and handed it to Chu Shen. Chu Shen received it solemnly and scanned it with his divine sense. He was overjoyed. "Senior brother, isn't this a little too much?" He originally thought that borrowing a few 100,000 spirit jades from old Fa would be enough, but who knew that old Fa would casually throw 5 million spirit jades over? It was 10 times more than what he had expected. Lu Yi said indifferently, "Since you want to set up a formation, then set up the best one. Don't be too calculative about the early costs." Now that Lu Yi could freely travel between the Vientiane Sea and the merfolk's territory, it could be said that he had completely opened up a path of wealth that belonged solely to him. Although he had not received any benefits from the merfolk yet, if he needed spirit jades in the future, he only needed to ask and the merfolk would not be stingy. Moreover, with the abundant resources under the sea, as long as he could find a way, those star beasts and seaweed could all be turned into spirit jades. 5 million spirit jades was really nothing to him. "Then I'll write a contract with senior brother. Just treat it as a loan and I'll return it to you with interest," Chu Shen said. Lu Yi shook his head. "No need, just treat it as my investment." Chu Shen did not refuse and said happily, "That's fine too." There was no need to be polite with old Fa. Although he was the master of this peerless island on the surface, it was actually old Fa who first occupied this place. Without old Fa's permission he would not have stayed, so old Fa should have a share of peerless island. "Oh right, senior brother, there's something else I want to discuss with you." "What is it?" Chu Shen said, "In the past few days, someone has contacted me on behalf of a certain faction. They want to bring our peerless island under their jurisdiction. If we agree, they can provide us with some resources and manpower. What do you think, senior brother?" Lu Yi said, "You're the island master of Peerless Island. You can make these decisions yourself, no need to ask me." Chu Shen nodded. "Then I know what to do." A moment later, Chu Shen left. Although he did not say what he would do, Lu Yi knew that Chu Shen would never agree to those factions' requests just from the fact that he came to borrow spirit jades. In any case, he was from the coachman world. Even if he really wanted to cooperate with a force, he would only choose a local force in the Wanxiang galaxy. Why would he collude with other forces? Moreover, he was a fledgling who wanted to achieve great things. If he really agreed to cooperate with other forces, he would definitely be restricted and controlled by others in the future. His personality was the kind of person who would rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. How could he allow such a thing to happen? While the construction of Matchless Island continued, the embryonic form of the Grand Protective Array had already been completed. With the protection of the Grand Protective Array, the amount of starry sky energy produced by the minor constellation palace's reverse seawater would be reduced. This also caused the density of starry sky energy on Matchless Island to increase even faster than before. This change was clearly felt by every cultivator on the Peerless Island, causing them to feel excited. Lu Yi was waiting for the time when the Azure Sea Snail could be used. Although he could enter the Constellation Hall's main hall through the entrance of the Minor Constellation Hall, he still needed to rush to the Mermaid Clan's territory from the main hall. In a place like the sea, without a seahorse as a mount, it would be very slow to swim. Therefore, it was best to use the Azure Sea Snail to directly reach the Heavenly Snail Hall. After a few more days, it was finally time to use the Azure Sea Snail. Lu Yi didn't immediately urge the Azure Sea Snail's power. Instead, he first dived into the sea to check if the entrance to the Minor Constellation Hall was still open. After confirming that there were no problems with the entrance and that there were no signs of it closing, Lu Yi quietly returned to the cave and, under the cover of many restrictions and spirit arrays, blew the Azure Sea Snail. The entrance opened and he stepped inside. Returning to the Minor Constellation Hall, Lu Yi immediately noticed that many gazes were fixed on him, one of which was particularly sharp. But soon, these gazes softened. Lu Yi looked around and found that there were many mermaids here, both in the open and in the dark. In the direction of the source of the sharp gaze, there was a very majestic male mermaid. Judging from the other party's aura, he was from the Moon Jade realm. Obviously, after the previous incident, the Mermaid clan had made arrangements here to prevent Lu Yi from attracting any masters here and catching them off guard. Li Tai Bai, a familiar voice called out. Lu Yi turned to look and saw Bai Lu walking towards him. She had undoubtedly been waiting here on purpose because Lu Yi had told her that he would come back in a few days. She knew the characteristics of the Azure Sea snail. How is it? Lu Yi asked. Last time, he hadn't waited for the battle to end before leaving, so he didn't know what had happened in the end. However, before he left, he had seen that Moon Jade Realm midstage being suppressed by the Mermaid Clan's elders, so it was very likely that the enemy had already been defeated. That Moon Jade is already dead, Bai Lu explained. As she explained, she handed over several storage rings. These are all his belongings. The elders told me to give them to you. Lu Yi said, these are all your spoils of war, so there's no need to give them to me. I also have to thank you for doing me a great favor. Bai Lu grabbed his hand and placed the storage rings in his palm. These storage rings all have restrictions. The elders aren't proficient in breaking them, so they don't dare to act rashly. It's better to leave them to you. Lu Yi thought about it and nodded. Then I'll give them to you after I break the restrictions. Bai Lu continued. Also, the elders said that if you encounter any troublesome fellows in the future that you can't deal with, just lure them here, and we'll help you deal with them. Also, you're not allowed to thank us, and you don't have to be polite. You've helped us a lot, so we naturally have to help you. What else could Lu Yi say? He could only nod. However, this time, he was lucky. He had lured that Moon Jade Realm midstage cultivator here. If it had been someone else who was more cautious, they might not have been able to do so. Moreover, the door was right there. After they came in and sensed that something was wrong, they would definitely leave immediately. Therefore, it was best not to do this a second time. There were too many uncontrollable factors. What about that ghost cultivator? Lu Yi asked. Although he had warned Bai Lu before he left, if the Mermaid Clan killed Ghost Cultivator along with the Ghost Cultivator, then Ghost Cultivator's death would be too unjust. Come with me, Bai Lu said and led Lu Yi in a certain direction. Along the way, Lu Yi activated the Thousand Faces spirit pattern and changed his appearance into Fa Wuzuan's appearance. Bai Lu clicked her tongue in wonder. The last time Lu Yi came here, he also had Fa Wuzuan's appearance. Although his appearance was different, his temperament and figure could not be changed. Moreover, only Lu Yi could enter this place through the Azure Sea Snail, so Bai Lu still recognized him at a glance. You don't want her to know your true appearance? Bai Lu asked. Lu Yi nodded. She has seen my true appearance, so I have to use a different appearance to meet her. Bai Lu understood. Ghost Cultivator was currently locked up in a prison-like place in the Azure Sea Snail Palace. This place was originally used to imprison mermaids who had made mistakes, so it did not have much defensive power. However, when Lu Yi saw Ghost Cultivator, he found that she was lying limp on the ground like a pile of mud, not moving at all. Her aura was very weak, as if she had lost all her spiritual power. A few days ago, she used some unknown method to repel Yu Yao's attack head-on. Even if the other party did not use her full strength at that time, it was not easy to do so with the strength of a constellation. For this reason, Ghost Cultivator paid a huge price and became dispirited at that time. Looking at it today, the situation seemed to be even more serious than before. However, one thing was certain, Ghost Cultivator was not dead. The main reason was that the mermaids did not know how to deal with Ghost Cultivator. Lu Yi told Bai Lu that this fellow was neither an enemy nor a friend, so the mermaids could only leave her be for the time being. Is she seriously injured? Lu Yi asked. Bai Lu said, I've examined her. There are no serious injuries, but it seems that because she used a power that did not belong to her, her chi is weak and her body is weak. Fourth Elder also placed a restriction on her body, so she can't recover or use her spiritual power. Lu Yi understood and stared at Ghost Cultivator who was lying motionless on the ground as if she had fallen asleep. His eyes flashed. Open the door, Lu Yi said. Bai Lu turned her head and motioned to the male mermaid who was in charge of guarding this place. He immediately stepped forward and undid the restriction, opening the door to the prison. However, Li did not go in. When Bai Lu was about to enter, he even pulled her aside and moved her to the side. Just as Bai Lu was puzzled, a sudden change occurred. Ghost Cultivator, whose aura was clearly weak and whose spiritual power had been depleted, suddenly jumped up as if she had been injected with chicken blood. She rushed out of the prison like a bolt of lightning and disappeared in the next instant. Only a smug voice could be heard from all directions. "You want to trap this old lady here? Try again in your next life. Hey Wuzun, I will settle this debt with you sooner or later." Bai Lu was shocked. She never imagined that the restriction Fourth Elder placed on Ghost Cultivator would lose its effect. Moreover, Ghost Cultivator had recovered her strength at some unknown time. She wanted to chase after her, but Lu Yi pulled her back. She turned to look at Lu Yi in confusion. Lu Yi shook his head, then said softly in the direction Ghost Cultivator left, "I'll wait for you here. Come back when you understand." If this was any other place, Ghost Cultivator might have escaped. This fellow's other abilities aside, her concealment and escape methods were first-rate. A mermaid territory might not be able to trap her. However, this was the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Where else could she go besides the Emperor Snail Palace? Deep into the 10,000 Elephant Sea? That would be seeking death. If Ghost Cultivator wanted to escape now, Lu Yi had to agree. "You knew she was faking it?" Bai Lu asked. Otherwise, why would Li Taibai pull her aside when the prison door was opened? It was obvious that he was making way for Ghost Cultivator. Lu Yi shook his head. "I didn't see that. However, people like her are extremely cunning. Even if she was placed under a restriction, she shouldn't be so weak. There's no harm in thinking more when dealing with her." Bai Lu seemed to understand. "You humans are so complicated." "She's not a human. She's a ghost." End of chapter. Chapter 1480. As for how to deal with Gui Ling, Lu Yi had a headache. If she really was an enemy, then he could just kill her. There was no need to show any mercy, but Gui Ling wasn't an enemy. It was true that he had encountered some trouble because of her. If he hadn't lured the enemy to the merfolk's territory, Lu Yi wouldn't have known how to deal with it. He had to settle this with her. He couldn't let her go. While waiting, Lu Yi began to break the restrictions on the storage rings. As expected of the Moon Jade Realm's storage rings, the restrictions weren't complicated, but they weren't easy to break. Lu Yi spent a lot of effort and even destroyed one storage ring before he could break the rest. As mentioned before, he gave the storage rings to Bai Lu. These were the merfolk's spoils of war. No matter how good the treasures inside were, he had no reason to keep them. Since he had nothing to do, he chatted with Bai Lu. Bai Lu loved to listen to him talk about the outside world. When Lu Yi was at the Constellation Hall, Bai Lu would pester him to talk about these things every time she went there. She always listened with great interest. Unfortunately, their clan was cursed and couldn't leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Otherwise, they could go out and take a look. Time passed. After more than half a day, Lu Yi, who was arguing with Bai Lu about the Constellation Hall, suddenly stopped talking and turned to look at the door. "You don't want to come in? Do you want me to invite you in?" Bai Lu was startled. When she turned to look, she didn't see anything. Just as she was about to speak, the space at the door distorted, and a familiar figure appeared. Who else could it be but the ghost clan member called Gui Ling? Bai Lu was slightly frightened. With this level of concealment, no one in the Merfolk clan would be able to detect her. She didn't know how Li Taibai had detected her. If it was before, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to detect her. However, after deriving a new concealment technique, Lu Yi's attainments in concealment were much stronger than before. Moreover, part of his new concealment technique came from Gui Ling's ghostly patterns, so they could be considered to be of the same origin. In addition, Gui Ling's current condition wasn't good, so it wasn't difficult for him to detect her. The ghost no longer looked like she had just been injected with chicken blood. Her face was obviously very pale, and her eyes were somewhat listless. That attack just now was obviously a burst of power that she had accumulated for a long time. As long as she escaped from this place, she could find a place to recuperate. Who would have thought that she would wander around the Huang Snail Palace for half a day without being able to leave? It was not that there was no way out. There were several passages leading to the 10,000 Elephant Sea in the Royal Snail Palace, but Ghost retreated after a brief attempt. Revealing herself, She clutched her chest with one hand and staggered into the cell. Then, she sat down not far from Lu Yi and gasped for breath as if she was about to die. She coughed up blood before she could speak, and blood stained her veil. Bai Lu looked on worriedly, afraid that she would really die just like that. Lu Yi, however, remained indifferent, because he didn't know if it was true or not. Spectre's miserable appearance might just be a means to gain sympathy. After a long while, Spectre calmed down and asked, "Le Wuzuan, tell me honestly, where is this place?" There was a group of mermaids here, and other than this strange space, the surroundings were filled with seawater similar to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Spectre really couldn't figure out where this place was. She had taken out the star chart to try to locate it, but the star chart was completely useless here. Where is this place? You can make your own judgment. Why ask me? Lu Yi replied indifferently. Spectre's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle tip. She stared at Lu Yi for a long time before slowly shaking his head. Impossible, absolutely impossible. She did have a guess, but how could this kind of thing be true? If you say it's impossible, then it's impossible. Lu Yi had no intention of explaining for her. But since you're here, then stay here and don't think about nonsense. Don't try to hurt any of the mermaids. Otherwise, you'll only make your situation worse. Spectre said angrily, "Fu Wuzuan, do you still have a conscience?" Lu Yi looked at her casually. "You used my name to divert the trouble, causing me to be hunted down by Yu Yao, and you're talking to me about conscience? Do you have any conscience at all? Believe it or not, I didn't want to divert the trouble away. I was really out of ideas at that time. You just happened to contact me, and I thought that we might be able to fight him together. Who knew that you would run away by yourself? If he wanted to chase you, I couldn't stop him. Besides, if I really wanted to divert the trouble away, I could have totally ignored you. But in fact, I've been chasing you all the time because I was afraid that something would happen to you. At that time, I could have helped you. Otherwise, do you think I would have come to this godforsaken place? I was worried about you. Do you believe that yourself?" Lu Yi looked at her coldly. Ghost touched her chest and said, "I can swear on my conscience." Lu Yi stared at her for a while. He didn't see any falsehood in her eyes. He really couldn't tell whether she was telling the truth or not. Normally, after Lu Yi had diverted Yu Yao away, Spectre could have escaped without a trace. There was no need for her to chase him all the way here. But she still came. It seemed like what she said was true. Lu Yi didn't want to dwell on this any longer. He said, "Anyway, since you're here, don't leave. This will be your home from now on. You can stay here with peace of mind." Spectre was on the verge of tears. She shifted her body and grabbed Lu Ye's arm with both hands. She shook it gently. "Senior Brother Fa, you can't do this to me. I know you can leave this place. It's that kind of door. Open the door and take me out. I'll remember your kindness for the rest of my life." Bai Lu looked at her coquettishly from the side. Her eyes were about to spit fire. Spectre was still shaking Lu Ye's arm. She vowed solemnly, "Also, don't worry. Spectre, won't tell anyone about this place, including the door. I'm a woman who keeps her mouth shut." Lu Yi didn't respond. He just looked at her with a half smile. Spectre scowled miserably. "Then what do you want me to do? You can't really lock me up here for the rest of my life. We don't have any deep grudges. Draw me a Dao, and I'll agree to anything." "I don't have a Dao to draw." Lu Yi pulled his arm out, stood up, and looked down at her condescendingly. "You're not in a good state, you should recover first." Saying this, he threw a few bottles of healing pills to her, then led Bai Lu out. Spectre wanted to chase after him, but she had no strength left. She lay on the ground and looked at Lu Ye's back. She opened her arms and shouted, "Fu Wuzuan, you can't do this to me." There was no response. After they left the prison, Bai Lu said angrily, "I'm going to ask the Grand Elder to place more restrictions on her. Let's see how she dispels them this time." Lu Yi stopped her. "There's no need. Let her recover first." Spectre looked very pitiful. Lu Yi could see that she was indeed at the end of her rope. If she didn't recover soon, it would leave behind some hidden dangers. "Then where should we keep her?" Bai Lu asked. "No need. Let her be. Anyway, she can't leave the Huang Luo Palace. She's not weak. If she makes a move on my people, she's a smart person. Smart people will do smart things. Don't worry, she won't do that. But there's only one thing to be careful of. Don't let her get close to Bai Shuang. Bai Shuang was the queen of the mermaid clan. Her strength wasn't high. If Spectre really captured Bai Shuang, then the mermaid clan would be in a passive position. As long as Spectre was prevented from coming into contact with Bai Shuang, everything would be fine. After that, Lu Yi was led by Bai Lu to see the Grand Elder Yen Miao. He apologized to the mermaid clan for the last time and thanked them. The Grand Elder's words were the same as Bai Lu's. Lu Yi had helped the mermaid clan a lot. If the mermaid clan had a chance to repay them, they would be very happy. How could they complain? At the same time, the Grand Elder also said that if Lu Yi encountered a similar situation in the future, just lead the enemy over and let them deal with it. After this experience, they would definitely deal with similar situations better next time. Naturally, Lu Yi agreed. After chatting for a while, Lu Yi bid farewell and left. He didn't stay with the mermaid clan for too long. Lu Yi borrowed a seahorse star beast and rushed toward the Constellation Hall alone. Bai Lu wanted to accompany him, but Lu Yi rejected her. Although the journey wasn't long, he might encounter some dangers. There were still many moon jade star beasts in the sea. He naturally didn't want Bai Lu to take such a risk. Fortunately, the journey was relatively peaceful. After waiting for half a day, he arrived at the Constellation Hall. Lu Yi let the seahorse return on its own. He went forward and pushed the door of the Constellation Hall. He didn't encounter much resistance and the door slowly opened. After Lu Yi walked in, the door closed automatically. After his last attempt, Lu Yi knew that unless it was during the period of the Constellation Hall battle, no one but himself could open the door of the Constellation Hall. Therefore, this huge Constellation Hall was a special place for him to store his treasures. He had a lot of storage rings on him. They were filled with all kinds of things. It wasn't convenient to carry them around all the time, so he just left them here. After all, as long as he had the minor Constellation Hall, he could come here whenever he wanted. Lu Yi left most of the storage rings behind. He only brought 3 storage rings with him. One was for spirit jades and spirit crystals, one was for spirit pills and spirit treasures, and one was for miscellaneous items. In addition to the storage space on the back of his hand, it was definitely enough for him to use. In front of the black stone tablet that represented the accumulation list, a door was maintained. Lu Yi returned to the bottom of Matchless Island through this door. He swam a distance away before quietly returning to Matchless Island. After silently returning to the cave, Lu Yi began to deduce the other spirit runes while continuing to comprehend the small saber inheritance. After exchanging blows with Yu Yao, Lu Yi realized that the inheritance bestowed by the Constellation Hall was very practical. It was especially suitable for the battle between the Constellation Hall and Yu Yao. He didn't plan to raise his cultivation at the moment. Naturally, he had to spend more effort in this aspect so that he wouldn't be restricted when facing Moon Jade in the future. End of chapter. Chapter 1481. 7 days later, in the Mermaid Territory, in front of the Tian Luo Palace. The void shook, and a door appeared. Lu Yi stepped out. However, just as he stood still, he frowned. The Pan Shan saber at his waist popped out, and the saber flashed as it slashed forward. A blurry figure that was almost invisible faced the saber light. Just as it was about to be cut, the figure suddenly twisted and narrowly avoided the saber. Ghost's eyes were full of excitement. She stared at the door behind Lu Yi without blinking, as if she had smelled the scent of freedom. She was a smart woman. Naturally, she knew that if she wanted to get out of here, she couldn't count on Fa Wuzuan's mercy. She had to find a way. But this damned place was surrounded on all sides by water similar to the Wanxiang Sea. She couldn't escape at all. After thinking about it, the only way to leave here was to use Fa Wuzuan's unknown method to make the door. So, she deliberately hid her figure and breath and waited here. Sure enough, such an opportunity came. At this moment, she suddenly attacked. Even Lu Yi almost couldn't react in time. After avoiding the saber, she was only one step away from the door. As long as she took this step, she would be able to open the sea and sky. However, this step was like a moat. Ghost's figure suddenly flew out as if she had been hit by a heavy blow. As she rolled, her concealment failed and her figure was revealed. The two mermaids who stayed here were shocked and quickly put on a vigilant look. On the other side, Ghost, who had been repelled, turned over nimbly. With one hand on the ground, she half-crouched on the ground like a cheetah ready to pounce. She looked at Lu Yi fiercely. "Fei Wuzuan, I don't want to fight with you. Get out of my way." Lu Yi stood in front of the door like a door god and looked at her indifferently. "It seems that you have recovered well. When he left 7 days ago, this guy was half dead. Now that he came back, he didn't see any major problems. Are you going to move or not?" Ghost gritted her teeth and shouted. Lu Yi didn't speak. He held the saber in one hand and raised his other hand, beckoning her with his finger. Ghost said angrily, "You asked for it." As his words fell, the afterimage of his body was clearly still in the same place, but his body had already swept to Lu Ye's side. His leg was like a whip, heavily swinging down. Lu Yi didn't seem to be able to react. Ghost's lips curled into a cold smile. Everyone thought that ghost cultivators only knew how to kill, but she didn't walk the normal path. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to obtain such a high ranking in the Constellation Palace contest. In terms of close combat ability, she was not inferior to any weapon cultivator. It was just that she rarely revealed this side of her. However, at this moment, in order to escape, she could no longer care about it. Freedom was right in front of her. As long as she could defeat Fei Wuzuan, she would be able to leave this damned place. She had never thought of defeating Lu Yi, because it was unrealistic. Fei Wuzuan's strength was already impressive when he was in the middle stage of the Constellation Realm. Now that he was in the late stage of the Constellation Realm, Spectre admitted that she was no match for him. However, it shouldn't be too much of a problem if it was just to push him back. In order to achieve her goal, she had unleashed all of her strength. She knew that this battle couldn't be delayed. There were many Yu Yao on the merfolk's side. Once those Yu Yao arrived, she would never be able to escape. This whip kick was powerful and heavy. Although it didn't carry too much power, all of its explosive power was contained within. Even if there was a mountain in front of her, Spectre was confident that she could shatter it. However, in the next moment, Spectre's brows suddenly furrowed. This was because Lu Yi, who didn't seem to be able to react, suddenly looked in the direction of her true body. Then he raised a hand. With a pa sound, the whip kick was blocked by one of his big hands. After her attack failed, Spectre's afterimage remained in place while her true body moved to the other side and punched out. Her attack was blocked once again. Lu Ye's hand inexplicably blocked the path of her attack, easily blocking it. At the same time, his gaze shifted to her. Spectre was shocked. She knew that Fei Wuzuan was very strong, but she hadn't expected him to react so quickly. She gritted her teeth, and a red light suddenly erupted from her body. Clearly, she had activated some kind of explosive secret technique, causing her speed and strength to increase again. Asterisk pa pa pa. Asterisk dense sounds continuously rang out. Every time they rang out, spiritual power colliding and exploding. The two merfolk on guard duty were dumbfounded. This was because in their field of vision, it seemed as if countless phantoms had appeared and disappeared, circling around Lu Yi and attacking him relentlessly. They knew that they wouldn't be able to withstand such an onslaught for even an instant. However, such a violent and concentrated attack couldn't even make their clan's esteemed guest move a single step. He stood there calmly, his hand constantly blocking back and forth, perfectly blocking each attack. This scene was rather comical, as if a child who hadn't been satisfied was throwing a tantrum at an adult. In just 10 breaths, Spectre had changed her position countless times and launched countless attacks, but none of them were effective. She felt a chill run down her spine. She couldn't understand how Fei Wuzuan could be so unreasonably strong as they were both at the late stage of the Constellation Realm. For her to be able to rank near 200 in the Constellation Palace competition, her strength was naturally quite impressive. One had to know that the Constellation Palace competition was a competition between hundreds and thousands of galaxies, tens or even millions of constellations. Rank 200 wasn't very high, but it was definitely one of the best. However, at this moment, she couldn't move Fa Wuxia at all. Of course, this was because she hadn't used her full strength, but when had Fa Wuxia used his full strength? During the confrontation, Spectre suddenly retreated, her aura becoming mysterious and unpredictable. Her eyes became serious. Fa Wuxia, be careful. I don't want to kill you. If you can't handle it, then hurry up and get out of my way. Saying so, her figure suddenly split into 2 into 4 into 8. Lu Yi observed with rapt attention and raised an eyebrow, because he found that he couldn't see through the 8 phantoms. These 8 phantoms all looked real, but he didn't know what kind of mysterious secret technique they were using. But from what Spectre had said just now, it was obvious she was going to put her life on the line. The 8 phantoms moved in unison, turning into 8 streams of light, fanning out towards Lu Yi as fast as lightning. Lu Yi suddenly felt his heart palpitate. How could he not know that this secret technique used by Spectre was incredibly powerful? The hand holding the mountain pan saber finally moved. With a push of the saber, a continuous stream of saber light began to burst forth. In an instant, the dense saber light was like the waves of the sea, wave after wave, endless and endless. The 8 phantoms arrived, their figures crisscrossing, turning Lu Yi's position into a land of death. In an instant, even Lu Yi felt a great pressure. Spectre's secret technique was extremely lethal and difficult to guard against. If he hadn't comprehended the saber technique in the dagger inheritance, it would have been difficult for him to resist with his previous tyrant saber art. Relatively speaking, the tyrant saber art was more inclined towards offense, while the dagger inheritance's saber art was both offensive and defensive. At this moment, the wave-like saber's light was constantly being shattered, but after it was shattered, new saber's light would appear. After 3 breaths, Lu Yi put away his saber. Spectre's true body appeared not far away, gasping for breath, her face slightly pale. It was obvious that the secret technique just now had taken a great toll on her. She looked in despair at Lu Yi, who was guarding the door like a door god, and her eyes became aggrieved. Then she sat down on the ground and wailed like a shrew. Wiping her tears, she shouted, "You bully me!" When Bai Lu and the other merfolk elders, who had sensed the commotion, arrived, they were just in time to see this scene that left them speechless. Pairs of eyes turned to look at Lu Yi. No one knew what he had done to make Spectre cry so sadly. Her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Lu Yi, full of accusation. Lu Yi frowned. He had never seen someone cry when they couldn't win, but Spectre had always been shameless. Others might not be able to do such a thing, but Spectre could. Spectre's crying was irritating, so Lu Yi pointed at her and said lightly, "If you cry again, you'll never be able to leave here." The wailing Spectre immediately stopped crying and covered her mouth with her hand, but her shoulders shook as she continued to sob. It seemed that she was really sad. Lu Yi glared at her, then turned to speak a few words with Yen Miao and the other elders, telling them what had just happened. After learning that it wasn't another invasion, Yen Miao and the others quickly dispersed, leaving only Bai Lu behind. After a while, the door slowly disappeared. Only then did Lu Yi leave. Even just now, he did not let his guard down. Who knew if Spectre would suddenly jump up and force her way through the door? She was capable of doing such a thing. She hasn't caused you any trouble recently, has she? Lu Yi asked Bai Lu. Bai Lu smiled. You're right, she's a smart person, so although we didn't restrict her, she hasn't hurt any of our people. Lu Yi nodded. We still have to be careful, we can't let her come into contact with Bai Shuang. I know, there's always someone secretly guarding Bai Shuang. What are you talking about? Why don't you let me hear it? Spectre sensed that the two of them were communicating through divine sense and immediately had an opinion. Her eyes were still red and swollen, but at this moment, she looked like she was bursting with curiosity, which was extremely comical. It's none of your business, Lu Yi said in annoyance. Spectre came up and asked expectantly, Wuzuan, when are we leaving here? Lu Yi glanced at her. Did I say you could leave? Spectre said, You just said that if I don't cry, I can leave. I said that if you cry again, you'll never be able to leave. Don't you mean the same thing? Spectre said matter-of-factly. Lu Yi was too lazy to pay attention to her unreasonable pestering, and changed the topic. The matter of you causing trouble to others, we have to properly calculate. How do you want to settle it? Spectre looked pitiful. I don't have money anyway. Those who knew her well knew that she was poor. Chapter 1482. Of course, Lu Yi did not expect her to compensate him. That was meaningless to him. Besides, how much money could a poor ghost compensate him? He said leisurely, you said that if I could survive, you would compensate me. Ghost blinked her big watery eyes. She wanted to deny it, but now that she was under his roof, she could not deny it. She could only laugh it off. Did I say that? I don't remember. Think about it carefully. I think you should remember. Lu Yi looked at Ghost intently. Ghost felt guilty under his stare. She said angrily, I said it. So what? How do you want me to compensate you? My body? If you can do it, then I can't resist. That's not necessary. But I want to see the ghost tattoo on your body. I know you can't forget this. Ghost gritted her teeth. Last time, Fa Wuzuan said that he wanted to see the spiritual tattoo on breath concealment. In the end, she rejected him. She did not expect that Fa Wuzuan would still make this request. But now, the situation was different from last time. Ghost felt that if she refused, she would not be able to leave this place. But if he asked her to agree, she would not be happy. As she said last time, it was not a matter of money. After being angry for a while, Ghost said, the ghost tattoo on breath concealment is in an inconvenient position. I am a woman and you are a man. How do you want to see it? Lu Yi thought for a moment and took out a shadow recording stone. If you feel embarrassed, I can ask Bai Lu to help me record it and watch it repeatedly. Ghost looked at the shadow recording stone in his hand in disbelief. You even prepared this. This was obviously premeditated. Fa Wuzuan was really shameless. Ghost took a deep breath and suddenly laughed. Fa Wuzuan, do you want to consider my proposal last time? What? Marry me and you can see whatever you want. Ghost tried to throw a flirtatious glance at Lu Yi as she spoke. But she was obviously not good at this. Her flirtatious glance was not good at all. Not only was it not seductive, but it also made people laugh. A toad wants to eat swan meat. Lu Yi snorted. The ghost froze for a moment, then immediately flew into a rage. Baring his fangs and brandishing his claws, he pounced on Lu Yi, shouting, Who are you calling a toad? They had gone too far. If this could be tolerated, what could be tolerated? Lu Yi raised a finger and pressed it against Spectre's forehead. Spectre's arms were short, and she was not as tall as Lu Yi. She struggled for a while but still failed. How about this? You can inscribe the ghost tattoo. That's not too much to ask, right? Lu Yi asked. Ghost paused, thought for a moment, and nodded. That's more like it. She suddenly thought of something and said angrily, Why didn't you say so when you saw the hidden ghost tattoo last time? She had even taken off her shirt and suffered a great loss. Lu Yi looked at her coldly. How can a real ghostly tattoo be the same as the one you've inscribed? In terms of effect, it was naturally better to observe the real ghostly tattoo. However, the ghostly tattoo on the specter's body was not easy to observe, so he could only settle for the next best thing. He casually tossed a blank jade board to Ghost and told her to carve it herself. Lu Yi stood quietly to the side, waiting. However, he still had no idea how to deal with Spectre. It did not matter if the Merfolk clan was exposed or not. This was the Wanxiang Sea. Even if they were exposed, no one could do anything to them. However, the secret that he could open a door to this place could not be exposed. If it were someone unrelated, it would be best to kill them to silence them. However, Lu Yi could not bring himself to kill Spectre. It was unrealistic to let her go, so he had to find a way to restrict her so that she could not expose these secrets. Soul manipulation was one way. If Spectre was willing to let Lu Yi plant the soul manipulation tattoo, then everything would not be a problem. However, the the soul manipulation tattoo required Spectre's cooperation to be successfully planted. If there was even the slightest resistance, it would definitely fail. For someone as proud as Spectre, how could she be willing to let Lu Yi plant the soul manipulation tattoo on her? If he really mentioned this to her, Spectre would definitely fight him to the death. It was also impossible to keep Spectre in the Merfolk clan's territory forever. Right now, she could play her part and not do anything to the Merfolk clan because she had hope in her heart that she would be able to leave here sooner or later. However, if she was imprisoned here for too long, it was hard to guarantee that she would not do something drastic. Lu Yi was not worried about anything else, but he was afraid that she would one day hold Bai Shuang hostage. At that time, the Merfolk clan would probably really fight to the death with her. Lu Yi had been thinking about this matter for the past few days, but unfortunately he still had no clue. Li Tai Bai, are you in a dilemma about how to deal with her? Just when Lu Yi felt that it was difficult to deal with, Bai Lu suddenly transmitted a message to him. Lu Yi turned his head in surprise. You can tell? Bai Lu nodded. Although I don't know what your relationship is, I can see from your interactions that you have some friendship, but not much. It also seems that you have some grudges. You don't want to kill her, but you also don't want to let her go, so you are in a dilemma. Lu Yi really did not expect Bai Lu to have such a pure and intelligent side. Her observation skills were quite meticulous. He did not deny it and nodded. I am indeed thinking about how to deal with her. Have you thought of a way? Lu Yi shook his head. Not for the time being. Bai Lu smiled and said, do you want the kind of method that can make her keep a secret without restricting her too much? Exactly. If the restriction was too great, the ghost would absolutely not agree to a method like soul control. Hearing you say that, it seems that you have a way? Bai Lu smiled. I might really have a way. Lu Ye's eyes lit up. Tell me about it. Bai Lu shook her head. I can't say, but if you only have that kind of request, this method should work, so I have to give it a try. Then let's give it a try. Lu Yi agreed. Anyway, there was nothing he could do. Bai Lu had a way, so naturally he would let her try it. If it really worked, the problem in front of him could be solved. Bai Lu got his permission and said something to the mermaid who had been guarding here. The mermaid obeyed and quickly left. A moment later, the mermaid returned, but this time, she brought 2 of her people with her. They were 2 mermaids and they looked exactly the same. It seemed like they were twins. The 2 sisters came before Bai Lu and bowed respectfully to her first, then to Lu Yi. Ghost, who was inscribing ghostly patterns on the side, glanced at them curiously. She had long sensed that Lu Ye's status here wasn't low, so she didn't find it strange. Bai Lu said something to the twin mermaid sisters, and the 2 sisters immediately took out an item each. Lu Yi looked closely and found that they had taken out 2 golden conches. They looked exactly the same as her azure sea conch, but the color was different. This was clearly something from the celestial conch hall, but she didn't know what they were used for. The conches in the celestial conch hall had all kinds of strange effects. Lu Ye's conch could open the door to the celestial conch hall, Yen Miao's conch could disperse the star beasts in the sea, and the other mermaids' conches had their own wonders. However, these 2 golden conches didn't just have the same color, but also the same texture. After handing over their golden conches, the 2 sisters left. Bai Lu said to Lu Yi, I want a drop of her blood. Lu Yi nodded and unsheathed his Pan-Shan saber. Before Ghost could react, she felt a sharp pain on the back of her hand. She quickly jumped up and looked at Lu Yi warily. What are you doing? Lu Ye's saber had already returned to its scabbard, and he held a drop of Ghost's blood in his hand. He didn't even look at her. Shut up. Bai Lu smiled at Ghost, motioning for her not to be nervous. Then she raised her hand and slit her palm, causing a drop of blood to flow out. She put her fingers together again, and with a surge of spiritual energy, the blood on Lu Ye's palm flew over and merged with her own blood. Ghost had a bad feeling. Wuzuan, what the hell are you doing? Mermaids were a very rare and strange race. Who knew what kind of strange abilities they had? Taking a drop of her blood like this was obviously a strange secret technique. Ghost couldn't be at ease. She didn't know what was going on, And how would Lu Yi know? Bai Lu didn't tell him at all. The merged blood was split into two by Bai Lu and dripped onto the two golden conches. Strangely enough, after the two golden conches absorbed the blood, they suddenly turned into two golden lights and merged with each other. Just like the two drops of blood, they were indistinguishable from each other. The essence of the golden light was a mass of golden liquid, which was obviously formed by the two golden conches. Bai Lu took out a shell and placed the golden light on it. She tilted her head back and drank half of it, then handed it to Lu Yi. Let her drink it. Lu Yi nodded, took the shell, and handed it to Ghost. Drink it. Ghost stared at the golden light on the shell in horror. She covered her mouth and shook her head. I don't want to. She didn't even know what this thing was. How could she drink it? Either drink it or be trapped here for the rest of your life. It's your choice. Lu Yi looked at her expressionlessly. Ghost frowned. If I drink it, you'll take me away? Drink it first. As for when I'll take you away, it depends on your performance. Fa Wuzuin, don't go too far. Although I'm not as strong as you, and I'm a woman, I have a backbone. I don't even know what this thing is. How can I drink it? You have to at least let me know what it is. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not poisonous. Ghost believed this because Bai Lu had drunk half of it just now. Can you help me ask around? What exactly is this? Ghost was still worried. Lu Yi frowned, turned to Bai Lu and asked. He also wanted to know what it was. Bai Lu smiled. Tell her that as long as she drinks this, she'll be my sister in life and death from now on. Lu Yi didn't doubt her and told her the truth. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.